Chapter 121, I'll take it all. Once I figured out the cause of Wang Yi's current physical illness, it was a simple matter to solve. However, when a solution appeared in my head, the suppressed anger that had been devoured by the devouring heaven technique was about to flare up again. Ning Fan hurriedly strengthened the operation of the devouring heaven technique. Then, taking a deep breath, he looked at Wang Yi's jade-like body and whispered, "Sorry." Immediately, Ning Fan took off the clothes that were still half hanging on Wang Yana, and suddenly Wang Yi's jade body was completely exposed to Ning Fan's view. Although the swallowing heaven technique was constantly in operation, suppressing the rekindling of the fire, but looking at Wang Yi's intact jade body, Ning Fan, who was a virgin, still had a severe tremor in his heart and mind. He didn't dare to look any longer, for fear that he would not be able to suppress the fire. Then he immediately diverted his attention, channeling his aura into the palm of his hand, and then massaging it back and forth on her jade body. This aura within Wang Yi's body, although it had tortured her, had the medicinal effect of a small pill of immortality, as well as refined aura. It would be a waste to push it out of her body directly. If he performed a few more rounds of massage, allowing Wang Yi's jade body to complete the absorption of this aura, it would be of great benefit to her body. Soon, with Ning Fan's massage, the qi in Wang Yi's body gradually merged into her limbs and bones, nourishing every corner of her body. If you look closely, there are flashes of light shining from all over Wang Yi's body, and her hot and red face has also returned to normal. Half an hour later. Boom! There was a dull sound in the hotel room, which came from Wang Yi's body. An invisible force rushed towards Ning Fan. Ning Fan was pale as he had expended a lot of spiritual energy to guide the energy within Wang Yi's body. After sensing this energy, he quickly used the swallowing heaven technique, and spiritual energy appeared in the palm of his hand to extinguish the energy. Ning Fan frowned and said, "It's that kind of energy again." It's very similar to spiritual energy, but there are also major differences. The first time I felt this kind of energy was when I used it to heal Master Shao. I didn't expect to feel it again within Wang Yi's body at this time. What exactly is this aura? Soon, Wang Yi opened her eyes and felt a strong tremor in her body when she realized that her body was empty. When she saw that Ning Fan was still by her side, her body trembled again. At the same time, her entire face flushed red. "You were in a special situation just now, and I apologize for the process of saving you." Ning Fan hurriedly turned away when he saw her wake up. Wang Yi was stunned at first, then she remembered. At the same time, she felt that the pain in her body had indeed disappeared, and she knew in her heart that Ning Fan had not lied. That being said, Wang Yi's heartbeat was still extremely fast. Especially when she felt a slight squeezing pain in her baby storage and lower abdomen, her heartbeat quickened even more. Although she did not know the specific process of Ning Fan's treatment, she was able to guess most of it. It must have been a long period of intimate contact. Phew! After a minute or two, Wang Yi eased up a little, put on the clothes that Ning Fan had taken off, got off the bed, poured a cup of hot water for Ning Fan, and said, "Mr. Ning, thank you so much tonight." Ning Fan nodded and then asked, "Do you feel any difference in your body?" Difference? Wang Yi was momentarily stunned, but then she felt it carefully and frowned. "Mr. Ning, I feel like there's a kind of energy inside me that I've never felt before. It seems that this energy is also what made me feel unwell tonight, rushing around inside my body. At that time, I couldn't control it at all, but now it seems that I can control it." Ning Fan pondered, "Then try to feel this energy and gather it in the palm of your hand." Wang Yi did as she was told and exclaimed, "It actually works." Ning Fan pointed to the safe next to him and said, "Use your full strength and punch it here." At this, Wang Yi hesitated. This was a safe, and if she really used her full strength, she would probably damage her own fist. But thinking that Ning Fan was watching her, she gritted her teeth and said, "Okay." Bang! The next moment, she closed her eyes and slammed her palm onto the safe. However, the pain she had imagined did not appear. When Wang Yi opened her eyes, she was shocked. Did I really do that? She saw that the safe, which had been perfectly intact, was now deeply indented. Wang Yi couldn't imagine that she had done this. Before this, although she knew a bit of fighting techniques and her strength could be unleashed, she could never have done this. "You did it," Ning Fan replied. Then he whispered, "This kind of aura is really similar to spiritual energy, it can make a person stronger." He looked at Wang Yi and said, "Right, have you ever heard anyone mention anything like this? Like the appearance of a qi within the body." Wang Yi frowned and looked carefully at the qi within her palm. "Mr. Ning." Suddenly, she thought of something. "I seem to remember hearing Grandmaster Shao mention something like this 5 years ago. Ning Fan hurriedly asked, "What did he say?" Wang Ye thought carefully. At that time, I saw Grandmaster Shao easily knock more than 20 people unconscious, and I asked him how he did it. Grandmaster Shao smiled and told me that it was because he had a qi within his body. It was because of that energy that he was called a master. Ning Fan continued, and? Wang Ye shook her head. "I'm not sure about the rest." After that, I asked him how I could become a master like him, but he was tragically killed before he could tell me, and he's now lying in the hospital. Master Shao. Ning Fan frowned and whispered, "It seems that when we get back to Jiangcheng, we need to find some time to meet this Master Shao." He wanted to find out the difference between the qi in Wang Ye's body and the aura he cultivated. He also wanted to know if there were still cultivators like himself in the world. Mr. Ning. At this time, Wang Ye thanked him seriously. "Thank you. If it wasn't for you, I might never be able to make this qi appear in my body in my life. And I would not have become a master like Master Shao." If before she was just a master who was a little stronger than ordinary people, now Wang Ye felt that she was also strong enough to become someone like Master Shao, who could fight 20 people by himself. Ning Fan smiled. "Let's just call it a trade. I helped you, so you'll give me 20 million. That shouldn't be too much, right? Is it?" "No." Ning Fan has, in the blink of an eye, made her the master she's always dreamed of becoming. "It's definitely not too much." "Okay, Mr. Ning." Wang Ye gritted her teeth and said, "I'll get the money right away." The next day, the shareholders' meeting of the Zhou Transport Group officially begins. In front of the Zhou residence. Fan. Old Lady Zhou spoke, "Help your grandmother get in the car. Today I will go with you to support you. I want to see who dares to touch you even a little today." She was not only saying this to Ning Fan, but also warning the Zhou family. Sure enough, after they heard what the old lady said, their faces immediately changed, and they glared at Ning Fan viciously before getting into the car and leaving. Later, Ning Fan and Zhou Shuxin helped the old lady into the car, and the car sped away from the old Zhou residence. It wasn't long before they arrived at the Zhou Transportation Group. The conference room was almost full, and Ning Fan and the others were the last to arrive. At this time, everyone's gaze fell on Ning Fan, with an unfriendly expression. They already knew that the reason why the old man had called a shareholders meeting today was because of this person. "Since everyone is here, I will get straight to the point." The old man said calmly, "This shareholders meeting is mainly for Ning Fan and Shu Yang. I want to ask Shu Yang to take back the shares in Ning Fan's hands." His gaze fixed on Madame Zhou Shu Yang, that was the old lady's name. "Those 10% of the shares belong to me." Madame Zhou still refused. "I can give them to whoever I want, no one can tell me what to do." Pang. Zhou Shuang. Grandpa Zhou slapped his palm on the table, directly calling Madame Zhou by her name, exasperated. "Do you know that this Jinx just returned from Jiangcheng yesterday and offended Lone Wolf? The Lone Wolf is the boss of the underworld in Hong County, and he is also a lunatic. Anyone who offends him will not have a good ending. Are you really going to let the Zhou Transportation Group completely collapse because of such a foundling?" Another foundling. Ning Fan looked distracted, and his mood could not calm down for a long time. "I don't care." Zhou Lei said indifferently, "I will never take back these 10% of the shares from Xiaofan." These words made everyone in the meeting room grind their teeth. "Grandma." Zhou Yu's face was gloomy. "Last night, we planned to go and beg Brother Wolf to forgive us. Do you know what we saw? Lin Hui was just because he didn't teach this loser a lesson that he was dismembered by Lone Wolf." Wow. His words caused an uproar, and everyone was incredulous. "Is this true?" Grandpa Zhou's face sank. Lin Hui was Lone Wolf's right-hand man. How could he bear to dismember Lin Hui? Zhou Yu said coldly, "Grandpa, if Lin Hui can't even solve this problem, then he is nothing but a waste of space. And Lone Wolf doesn't keep idle people on his staff, so he got rid of Lin Hui. This also proves from the side just how angry Lone Wolf is right now. If he knew that Ning Fan was holding shares of our Zhou's transport group, he would never forgive our family." These words completely shocked everyone in the meeting room. "Old lady, please take back the 10% of the shares from him. In that case, we can still distance ourselves from him, get the Lone Wolf boss's forgiveness, and cooperate with the Ren family again in a couple of days. The Zhou family will definitely soar to new heights." Everyone looked at Old Lady Zhou. Xiao Fan. However, Old Lady Zhou still refused, got up and said, "Let's go, there's no need to continue attending this shareholders meeting." She was about to really leave. Zhou Shuang. You really have been kicked in the head by a donkey. Zhou Shuaing's father was shaking with anger. I tell you, since you won't take back that 10% of the shares from him, then I will dump the shares in my hands. I will definitely not get involved in this mess. As Zhou Shuaing's father's words fell, everyone in the meeting room echoed that they would dump the shares in their hands. Zhou Shuaing's wife's face looked ugly. At this time, Ning Fan suddenly spoke up. Okay, selling shares? I'll buy all of them. Just. After he said this, he was mocked by Zhou Yu. You want to buy them? You're a waste of money. Everyone in the meeting room also looked at Ning Fan disdainfully, and even the old lady Zhou and her husband looked at him. Xiao Fan, you. Ning Fan smiled, and then called Wang Ya on the phone. Have you found the money? Send half of it to the Zhou Group. The Zhou Group is developing quite well, and it won't be a loss to buy it for 10 million. Besides, the old lady was so good to him, and he also wants to protect her hard work. Zhou Yu sneered, you really put on an act. I'll see what you're going to do when you can't come up with 10 million. No one believes Ning Fan. If he could really come up with 10 million, why would he have fled back from Jiangcheng? And why would he hold on to the 10% stake that the old lady gave him? 5 minutes passed, and Wang Ya arrived at the Zhou residence with a black plastic bag. Chapter 122 I don't know. Then, he walked straight up to Ning Fan and, to the stunned gaze of the Zhou family, opened the black plastic bag to reveal bundle after bundle of red paper. Then, with a respectful tone, he said, Mr. Ning, this is the 10 million in cash you asked for. Ning Fan took it. Then he threw the black plastic bag directly, and the red paper spread all over the conference table. At that moment, there was complete silence in the conference room. The Zhou family couldn't figure it out. How could a wild child who couldn't even get into university know a woman like Wang Ya? Where did he get so much money? Anyone who wants to sell their shares can sign a contract. Ning Fan said bluntly, I'll take as much as you have. Old Madame Zhou looked worried. Xiao Fan, you. She didn't want Ning Fan to buy so many shares. If Lone Wolf really targeted Zhou's transport group, then everything would be over. Grandma, I know what I'm doing. Ning Fan waved his hand and laughed. Don't worry, Lone Wolf will never target the Zhou group. Besides, I will find a way to make the Rin family cooperate with our company. After hearing these words, the people in the meeting room sneered, full of disdain. Lone Wolf had already disowned Lin Hui out of anger. How could he not target you? Very soon. Everyone in the meeting room signed the share transfer document with Ning Fan, and before long, the money on the table was all gone. Ning Fan. Zhou Yu bloated. Although I don't know where you got so much money from, you really are a good person to take over the Zhou Transport Group at this time. Ha ha ha. Just watch, Brother Wolf will definitely make a move soon. When the Rin family finds out that you have offended the boss of the Hong County underworld, how could they possibly cooperate with you? Not just him. Many people in the Zhou group looked at Ning Fan like they were watching a clown. You are no longer a shareholder here, so shouldn't you leave? Ning Fan sneered, or do you want me to ask the security to throw you out? These people were not angry, just narrowed their eyes and smiled. Don't be arrogant. You will be finished soon. Afterwards, they lifted their feet and left the conference room. It wasn't long before there were only a few people left in there, including Ning Fan. Fan. Zhou Shuxin sighed and said, this time you were too impulsive, and you shouldn't have bought the shares here. Zhou Shuxin's eyes were vacant. Grandma's original plan was also for you to sell these 10% of the shares. In that case, you would at least be able to keep some money, enough for you to live on for a long time. Alas, I'm sorry, I didn't think that something like this would happen. She blamed herself. Ning Fan smiled and said, Grandma, don't worry. Absolutely nothing will happen. It's just that. Neither Mrs. Zhou nor Zhou Shuxin believed Ning Fan's words, and they had already planned to go down and see if there was any way to solve this matter for Ning Fan. They also didn't know where Ning Fan got so much money, and just thought that Ning Fan borrowed it. So they couldn't just stand by and watch Ning Fan get hurt and take on tens of millions of debt. Jiangcheng, inside the hotel. Ren Feiyu and Ren Guochang are discussing how to take Tang Chuchu down. Bang! But at this moment, Ren Feiyu suddenly felt his heart seize, the glass in his hand slipped, and then he convulsed. His whole face looked hideous. This series of changes happened in just an instant. Feiyu. Ren Guochang was terrified. What's wrong with you? Ren Feiyu gritted his teeth and said, Grandpa, I'm in pain. My heart hurts, no, my whole body hurts, as if sulfur is corroding every organ in my body. Grandpa, am I going to die? What should I do? He fell to the ground in pain. Ren Guochang panicked and said, No, Feiyu, you will definitely be fine. I will call the doctor over right now. Just 10 minutes later, a Western medical team arrived to examine Ren Feiyu's condition. However, the reason why Ren Feiyu is in this situation is entirely because the aura that Ningfan left in his body is corroding his internal organs. With Western medical equipment, how can they find out? Trash. You bunch of trash. Ren Guochang cursed, if anything happens to my grandson, I will let you all die with him. Grandpa, I'm in pain. At this time, Ren Feiyu's painful voice sounded again. Ren Guochang said worriedly, Feiyu, think about whether you have eaten anything recently. Or whether anything strange has happened around you. Looking at Ren Feiyu's painful appearance at this time, Ren Guochang could only worry anxiously. After all, he is not a doctor and has no idea what to do. No. Ren Feiyu said painfully, Grandpa, I have eaten the same things as you these days, so how could it not be? Ning Fan. It must be Ning Fan. He said, and suddenly he remembered that after Tang Chuchu's birthday that day, he had gone to warn Ning Fan himself. At that time, he seemed to have said that if he did not kneel before him to apologize within 5 days, he would die. And now that such a strange illness had suddenly appeared on his body, who else could it be but Ning Fan? That kid? Ren Guochang frowned. What happened to him? Ren Feiyu panicked and said, Grandpa, go find Tang Chuchu and ask where Ning Fan is. Only Ning Fan can save me now. Ren Guochang did not ask any more questions. After finding the driver, he headed towards Tang Family Manor. Why have you come? Tang Chuchu did not look kindly upon seeing the grandfather and grandson. You are not welcome in our Tang family. Tang Sihai, however, shouted, Chuchu, how can you speak to your grandfather Ren like that? Tang Chuchu pouted. Uncle Ren, do you have something on your mind today? Tang Sihai asked with a smile. Where is Ning Fan? We're looking for Ning Fan. Ren Guochang spoke up, Sihai, do you know where he is? Ning Fan? Tang Sihai's face looked unnatural. Uncle Ren, did that kid offend you in some way? Chuchu, you should know where Ning Fan went, so tell your grandparents. He couldn't wait to use the Ren family to teach Ning Fan a lesson. Tang Chuchu also thought they were looking for Ning Fan to settle scores, and turned her head away. I don't know. Tang Sihai trembled with anger. You really want to make me die of anger? However, he immediately looked at the grandfather and grandson Ren Guochang. Uncle Ren, why don't you and Feiyu go inside and drink some tea for a while, and I'll have someone check where Ning Fan is right now. It's just right for Feiyu to cultivate a relationship with Chuchu, and we can talk about what the Xiao family is about to do against us. He never took Ning Fan seriously, and now he is about to see his daughter being deceived by Ning Fan, and there are no other young talents around, so Tang Sihai wants Ren Feiyu to get in touch with his daughter. No matter what, he is the young master of a provincial family, much better than that Ning Fan. Plop. However, at this moment, Ren Feiyu knelt before Tang Chuchu and begged, Chuchu, please, tell me where Ning Fan is. I'll owe you one, how about it? Chapter 123, just in case. Ren Feiyu suddenly knelt down. This made Tang Chuchu and the others freeze in shock. What the hell are you playing at? Tang Chuchu looked at Ren Feiyu suspiciously. Ren Feiyu begged piteously, Chuchu, I really don't want any trouble. I'm begging Ning Fan to save me, if he doesn't help, I'll die. As soon as he finished speaking, the pain of his internal organs being torn apart reappeared, and Ren Feiyu's face suddenly turned hideous. Tang Chuchu was startled by his reaction and gritted her teeth, saying, I'll call Ning Fan. Afterwards, she quickly called Ning Fan, and when she learned that Ning Fan had agreed to let Ren Feiyu go, Tang Chuchu let out a breath. Ning Fan had agreed. Tang Chuchu spoke. Ren Feiyu said excitedly, Chuchu, thank you. Hurry up and tell me where Ning Fan is. As long as I know where Ning Fan is, he has ways to get him to save me. However, Tang Chuchu shook her head and said, in the future, you must call me by my name when you see me, and then I will tell you where Ning Fan is. Apart from Ning Fan, she doesn't like other men calling her Chuchu. Ren Feiyu gritted his teeth and said, okay, Chuchu Tang Chuchu, I promise. Tang Chuchu then said, you can go back first, I will send you Ning Fan's location in 2 days. Are you playing with me? Ren Feiyu roared ferociously, does he not even want to save me properly? Tang Chuchu laughed, this is what Ning Fan told me to tell you. Don't worry, since he said 2 days, then I will definitely send you Ning Fan's location then. The aura that Ning Fan had entered into Ren Feiyu's body would not completely enter his internal organs until the 5th day, and that would be the most painful time. Ning Fan intended to make him suffer more, so that he would not dare to provoke him again in the future. He did not want to have such a fly constantly watching him from behind every day. Fei Yu. Ren Guochang spoke loudly, let's go, come back in 2 days. I hope that in 2 days, Miss Chu will keep her word and send us the location of that kid Ning Fan. Afterwards, they turned and left. Tang Chu smiled and murmured softly, Ning Fan, you really are getting better and better. I never thought that you could make Ren Fei Yu beg. It seems that I also have to work hard as soon as possible to complete this cooperation with the Jiang family, so that you can't catch up with me so quickly. Tang Xihai's face turned dark and his tone was not good. You don't need to be involved in this cooperation with the Jiang family, I will take charge of it personally. My own daughter has grown up, but she really turns her back on me. No. Tang Chuchu's face changed. Dad, we agreed on this before, why have you suddenly changed your mind? Tang Xihai explained, the Xiao family will hold a thank you meeting for the mysterious Dr. Ning in 4 days' time, and they have invited the powerful people of the entire Jiang city. I think you should know very well what the purpose is. It is to target the Jiang family and those families that cooperate with the Jiang family. Facing this situation, you can't control it. Tang Chuchu gritted her teeth and said, what if that mysterious Dr. Ning is Ning Fan? She had never dared to associate the divine Dr. Ning with Ning Fan, but now, after seeing how Ning Fan's medical skills could make Ren Fei Yu kneel down and beg for mercy, she was beginning to waver. Could the divine Dr. Ning, who was thanked by the Xiao family, be Ning Fan? Ning Fan? What are you thinking? Tang Xihai said disdainfully, I admit that Ning Fan's medical skills are indeed extraordinary among his peers, but how could he possibly be qualified to make the Xiao family thank him? The Xiao family's goal this time is simple, first, to thank Dr. Ning, and second, to invalidate the cooperation between the Jiang family and us here. In that case, they must have seen the press conference held by Miss Jiang. Naturally, they also saw the scene of Ning Fan standing next to Miss Jiang. Under these circumstances, if you were the Xiao family, Chu, would you thank someone who is likely to become an enemy? Not to mention gratitude, I'm afraid the Xiao family will also target Ning Fan soon. Tang Chu looked absent-minded, indeed. Her father's words made a lot of sense. Moreover, Tang Xihai's last sentence also made her face turn pale. If the Xiao family targets Ning Fan, then Ning Fan will definitely be in danger. At this moment, Tang Chuchu's heart rose with a deep concern. Hong County. News broke that Lone Wolf was about to target Zhou's transport group. After hearing this news, everyone chose to dissolve their cooperation. Lone Wolf. This is the boss of the underworld in Hong County, and he is also a lunatic. Anyone who is targeted by him will not fare well. For a time, Zhou's transport group's business fell to a freezing point, and it was in a precarious situation, on the verge of collapse. However, Ning Fan did not care about this at all. For the past 2 days, he had been accompanying Madame Zhou and Zhou Shuxin. After obtaining the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb, he would leave Hong County, and he would not know when he would see them again. At the same time, Ning Fan also wanted to take the opportunity to ask Madame Zhou something, but unfortunately, he never found the chance. 2 hours before the auction was about to begin. Grandma, I need to go out for a while. Ning Fan said to Madame Zhou, I have some things to take care of. Old Lady Zhou got up, let's go, I'll walk you to the door. Afterwards, the two of them walked towards the door, Ning Fan waiting for Lone Wolf to come and pick him up. Fan. Old Lady Zhou patted Ning Fan's hand and whispered, listen to your grandmother, leave Hong County tonight. Go far away, Lone Wolf is really not someone you can deal with. Grandma has lived in Hong County all her life, and knows his character, he will definitely avenge his grudges. She would rather see Ning Fan leave her side than see something happen to him. Want to leave? Zhou Yu suddenly appeared and sneered, too late. I received news that Lone Wolf just left the Yuhua Hotel. He's heading this way, towards our Zhou family mansion. Ha ha ha. Lone Wolf must have found some time to come over and teach this kid a lesson. TSK, Ning Fan, you're definitely going to be ruined this time. There was still some anger in the way he looked at Ning Fan. It was all this loser's fault, this jinx. Not only did he take the 10% of the shares from Madame Zhou, but he also plunged the Zhou family into this mess. If Ning Fan hadn't offended Lone Wolf, then the Zhou family would definitely have been able to secure a partnership with the Ren family, and the value of their shares would have increased several times over. But now everything had come to nothing. What? Madame Zhou's face paled, Lone Wolf is already on his way here? Fan, you must leave. She reached out and pushed Ningfan, telling him to leave as soon as possible. However, Ningfan smiled lightly and said, "Grandma, don't worry, Lone Wolf isn't here to cause trouble. He's here to pick me up for an auction." Chapter 124, Can You Not Get Me Into Trouble? Ningfan's words caused a dead silence in front of the Zhou family mansion. The two women, Zhou Laotai and Zhou Shuxin, looked at each other in shock. They were both worried to death. How could Xiaofan still be talking nonsense at this time? Ha ha ha. Ningfan, you really are going to make me laugh to death. The Lone Wolf boss came to pick you up to go to an auction? Zhou Yu sneered, what do you think you are? A big shot from Jiangcheng? No. You're just a piece of trash who can't survive in Jiangcheng, and you're still daydreaming about the Lone Wolf boss coming here to pick you up. He lifted his watch and narrowed his eyes, it'll be soon. Soon the Lone Wolf boss will be able to come over from the Yuhua Hotel, and that will be the end for you. Old Lady Zhou was worried. Xiaofan, listen to your grandmother and go. As for the company, you don't need to worry about it. After you leave Hong County, I'll find a way to sell it. No matter what, I can still get 3 million for it. In this way, you can survive even after you leave Hong County and even after you leave Daxia. Zhou Shuxin is also anxious. Yes, Xiaofan. Don't worry about things here. Grandma and I will take care of it. Ningfan smiled helplessly, but a warm current emerged in his heart. It's really nice to have a grandmother and sister like Shuxin who care about me so much. 3 million? It's too late. All of Zhou's transport group's partners have already announced that they are terminating their cooperation. According to my investigation, even the employees within the group have all run away. Zhou's grandfather's voice came through, all kinds of business have dropped to freezing point. Do you think there is any idiot who will accept Zhou's transport group at this time? Moreover, with the threat of lone wolves, no one will buy it. Not to mention 3 million, now even if you gave Zhou's transport group away for free, no one would take it. The two of them, Mrs. Zhou and her husband, turned pale, without a hint of blood in their faces. Has the company fallen into such a dire situation? It's over. Zhou Shuxin's eyes welled up with tears. It's over, Xiaofan, you're going to be saddled with tens of millions of debt. What should we do? She burst into tears, her eyes filled with worry. Ningfan, I have to say, all of us in the Zhou family should be grateful to you. Zhou Yu laughed. If it weren't for you, idiot, taking away the shares in our hands, we might be in the same predicament as you now. You really are a good person. Ha ha ha. Laughter rang out, and although these people said they wanted to thank Ningfan, in fact, the way they looked at him was full of disdain. Don't worry. Ningfan replied indifferently, very soon, you will be crying. Crying? The Zhou family members were taken aback. Zhou Yu laughed derisively, what kind of nonsense are you talking about? Not only have we perfectly distanced ourselves from Zhou's transport group and received the money, but we will soon be able to see you, this piece of trash, get killed by Lone Wolf. How could we possibly cry? What? Zhou Yu raised an eyebrow and said disdainfully, you're not still deluding yourself that Zhou's transport group can get through this current crisis, are you? Don't be ridiculous. Unless you can make Lone Wolf give up on you and cooperate with the Ren family, then you might have a chance of survival. Understand? These two conditions. No matter which one, for Ningfan right now, they are absolutely impossible to achieve. You. Old Madame Zhou trembled with anger. You are both from the Zhou family like Xiaofan. Why do you want to see Xiaofan get into trouble so badly? She was sad in her heart. Why would something like this happen in her own family? All of you are from the Zhou family? Zhou Yu sneered, Grandma, you're really joking, how is he even worthy of being from our Zhou family? If it wasn't for you, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to step into our Zhou family. Old Madame Zhou was so angry that she almost fainted. And just then, a car appeared in everyone's line of sight, and the Zhou family members immediately recognized whose car it was. It's Lone Wolf. That big Mercedes-Benz is the exclusive car of Lone Wolf. The boss of Lone Wolf is here, Ningfan, you can just wait for death without moving. Zhou Yu sneered and said, no one can protect you now. They got up quickly and went to meet the car, waiting to greet Lone Wolf when he got out. In Hong County, Lone Wolf's status was still quite high. After all, he was the emperor of the underworld and also a lunatic. No one wanted to offend him. Fan. You stand behind your grandmother. Old Lady Zhou walked up with her cane and shouted sternly, I just don't believe that Lone Wolf is really that ruthless, that he would do something to an old person like me. Today, with Grandma here, no one can touch you unless she dies. Her voice resounded powerfully. Even though she was old, she was still doing everything she could to protect Ningfan. Looking at the white hair on Old Lady Zhou's head, Ningfan's nose grew moist. Soon, a man got out of the Benz, and it was Lone Wolf. At this moment, he saw Ningfan at a glance, and his eyes lit up, and he wanted to ask Ningfan to get in the car. At this time, Zhou Yu suddenly stood in front of Lone Wolf and respectfully said, Brother Wolf. He did everything. He pointed at Ningfan and viciously said, he provoked you to set the rules at the Jiangcheng restaurant. And he also crippled your subordinate brother Hui. I think it would be best if you could dismember him and throw him into the sea to feed the fish, to set an example and deter others from defying your rules in the future. Not only did he reveal everything Ningfan had done at the Aegean Sea, but he also quickly disassociated the Zhou family from the matter. Finally, he even gave Lone Wolf an idea of how to deal with Ningfan. I'll dismember your mother. Who knew? At this moment, Lone Wolf's face turned black, and he slapped Zhou Yu in the face, pointing at him and scolding him, You want to die yourself? Don't drag me down, okay? Everyone in the Zhou family was dumbfounded. What the hell is Lone Wolf doing? Old Madame Zhou focused her attention and protected Ningfan behind him like a protective mother hen. Grandma, don't worry. Ningfan smiled. Besides, Fan has grown up, so even if something happens, he should be the one protecting you and Sister Shuxin. Then he took a step forward, looked at Lone Wolf, and said with a playful smile, I heard you came here to cause trouble? Lone Wolf felt a chill down his back. Chapter 125, Who do you think you are? He hurriedly bowed and said, Please, Mr. Ning, I absolutely didn't mean it. I came this time purely to invite you to the auction. There was silence in front of the Zhou family mansion. How is this possible? Zhou Yu's face turned pale. Not only him. Everyone in the Zhou family was stunned. In their minds, Lone Wolf should have just taken Ningfan out. Zhou's grandfather was a man who had experienced great storms, and he was the first to turn pale. He sensed that something was wrong. Brother Wolf. Zhou Yu roared, This person is defying the rules you set. You have to take action and cripple him. He was unwilling to accept this. He wanted to see Ningfan kneeling on the ground, miserable, because the incident at the Sea of Love restaurant, where Ningfan had broken his fingers, had twisted his mind almost beyond recognition. Shut up. Dolong turned around and shouted, Who the hell are you to give me orders? One sentence. It directly made Zhou Yu's face ashen. The Zhou family members' faces also turned ugly. Did Lone Wolf really not intend to deal with Ningfan? At this moment, regret appeared in their hearts. If they had known this, they should not have sold their shares. The old lady and her husband were first shocked, but then they let out a breath and were filled with joy, watching Lone Wolf's attitude towards Xiaofan. They thought that he should not deal with Xiaofan again. This relieved their hearts, which had been hanging in the balance. Ningfan. Suddenly, Zhou Yu thought of something and said frantically, Ningfan, even if you can be treated with such an attitude by Lone Wolf, what can you do about it? The Zhou Transport Group is finished, and all of its partners have chosen to sever their ties. Even Lone Wolf can't save you in this situation. Swish. The two elderly ladies, who had been immersed in joy, turned pale, and their deep concerns rose again. Had ha. Zhou Yufeng sneered, By that time, the Zhou Transportation Group will make you shoulder tens of millions of debt, and the 10 million you used to buy the shares in our hands will also vanish into thin air. You will be finished for the rest of your life. The Zhou family members also thought of this point, their eyes brightening. Now that they have sold the shares of the Zhou Transportation Group. Naturally, they don't want to see this company develop. Thinking about this, they looked at Ningfan and sneered. Even if you can make Lone Wolf treat you with such respect, what then? In the end, you'll still have to bear a huge debt of tens of millions and ruin your life, won't you? Really? Ningfan laughed, What if I can get the Ren family to cooperate with me? There was silence at first. Then, there was loud laughter in front of the Zhou family mansion. Ha ha ha. Ningfan, yes, you are indeed awesome, you were able to make Lone Wolf listen to your sweet talk and treat you with such an attitude. Zhou Yu sneered, but do you think you can still confuse the Ren family with such a clumsy ploy? It's a joke. The Ren family is a big family in the provincial capital, they have seen more of the world than we have walked on the road. How could he be like this simple-minded Lone Wolf with all-powerful limbs, be deceived by your sweet talk? His tone was full of disdain. In his opinion, apart from the idiot lone wolf, who would believe Ning Fan's flowery words, no one else would believe him. Not to mention this big family in the provincial capital. Lone Wolf's face looked ugly, and he wanted to rush forward and tear Zhou Yu's mouth off, daring to say that he was strong in the limbs but simple in the mind. But suddenly, the Lone Wolf thought of something, his face changed, and he looked at Ning Fan. Mr. Ning, is the Zhou Transport Group a business under your name? Ning Fan nodded, yes. Plop. The Lone Wolf directly collapsed to the ground, afraid and saying, Mr. Ning, I really didn't know that this business was yours. If I had known, even if you lent me 100 guts, I would not dare let those rumors spread. These days, he has been busy with Ning Fan's affairs all this time, and only occasionally heard from the people below that there were rumors that he would take action against Zhou's transport group. He didn't really care about this matter, because at that time, he was thinking about how to please Ning Fan, so naturally he didn't care about such trivial matters. Now that he suddenly knows that Zhou's transport group is a company owned by Ning Fan, he is really afraid. When he left from the Yuhua Hotel and came here today, his secretary also mentioned the current situation of Zhou's transport group. At that time, he even laughed and said that the company was finished. Really, even if he, the Lone Wolf, were to step in and save Zhou's transport group today, he could not bring it back to life, unless someone from another, more powerful family spoke up. As for the Ren family that Ning Fan mentioned, the Lone Wolf didn't think that they would cooperate with Zhou's transport group either. Yes, Ning Fan was indeed treated respectfully by Wang Ya. But his status was definitely limited to Jiangcheng, while the Ren family was a provincial family. It's still a business family. The most important thing is profit, and the Zhou's transport group can't bring them any at all. On the contrary, they have to spend a lot of mental energy to save the company. Under these circumstances, they will definitely not choose the Zhou's transport group. Thinking about this, the Lone Wolf's back broke out in cold sweat. It seems that he has inadvertently caused a big problem. Ning Fan glanced at Lone Wolf and said indifferently, once I leave Hong County, give my company more support, understand? If my grandmother and sister Shuxin suffer here, I will hold you responsible. Lone Wolf nodded with gritted teeth, yes, Mr. Ning. Ha ha ha. Zhou Yu sneered, still support your company more, Ning Fan, it won't be long before Zhou's transport group goes bankrupt. You want Lone Wolf to support heir? The Zhou family members also looked at Ning Fan with disdain. In their opinion, the Zhou transportation group definitely wouldn't survive the night. However, just then, another car appeared. Just as the Zhou family members were puzzled, a man covered in bruises and blood vessels, looking extremely hideous, rushed out of it. The Zhou family members looked at this man and felt very familiar, as if they had seen him somewhere before. My God! Isn't this Ren family young master Ren Feiyu? Suddenly, someone recognized this man and exclaimed. Originally, the Zhou family was going to cooperate with the Ren family, and they had investigated the Ren family at the time and seen Ren Feiyu's picture. No one expected Ren Feiyu to suddenly appear here, and Zhou Yu went up to him to try to curry favor with him. Unexpectedly, Ren Feiyu pushed him away and rushed towards Ning Fan, his face full of pain as he said, Ning Fan, please save me. Ning Fan laughed and said, do you remember what I told you 5 days ago? Ren Feiyu's face became hideous as he gritted his teeth. Chapter 126, It's Time to Know. Plop. The next moment, under the incredulous gazes of everyone, he directly knelt to the ground, Ning Fan, please save me. Boom. The scene in front of them of Ren Feiyu kneeling before Ning Fan directly refreshed the worldview of the Zhou family. They were dumbfounded. Ren Feiyu was the young master of the Ren family in the provincial capital, so why was he kneeling before Ning Fan? How was this possible? Old Master Zhou's eyes were wide with shock, and his body was trembling. A feeling suddenly arose in his heart that he had probably done something wrong. I heard that your Ren family is about to select a partner here in Hong County? Ning Fan smiled, is that true? Ren Feiyu looked pained, and gritted his teeth, it's true. He wasn't the kind of second master who knew nothing, and at least he knew everything about the family's projects. I hope this cooperation falls into the hands of the current Zhou's transport group. Ning Fan said calmly, is there an issue with that? Ren Feiyu said excitedly, no problem. I'll call the person in charge here right now and tell him about this, and have him come over with the contract right away. Afterwards, he took out his phone and made the call. After giving the order, he stared at Ning Fan with dead eyes, now you should be able to save me, right? He didn't want to admit for even a minute that he felt like his insides were being corroded. Therefore, as soon as Tang Chuchu told him that Ning Fan was with the Zhou family in Hong County, he arranged for the car to come here first. No issue. Ning Fan smiled. By the way, if you don't want to experience this kind of pain again, you should stay away from Choo-Choo in the future, and avoid us if you see us. Otherwise, I don't mind giving you a second chance to kneel down and beg me. Ren Feiyu gritted his teeth and remained silent. Then, Ning Fan activated the swallowing sky technique and placed the palm of his hand on Ren Feiyu's shoulder. Soon, the spiritual energy that had been rampaging wildly within Ren Feiyu's body was absorbed by him. It didn't take long. Ren Feiyu's expression and body returned to normal, and the next moment, he was limp on the ground, gasping for breath. These past 2 days, he had been tormented by this kind of pain that made him neither human nor ghostly. Now, he was finally getting better. Sister Shuxin. Ning Fan smiled and said to Zhou Shuxin, I'll leave it to you to sign a cooperation with the Ren family, and not only that, you will be in charge of this company in the future. Oh, by the way, I need you to change the name of the company these days. It should be called Shofan Transportation Company. Ning Fan, Qin Xiu. For a moment, he couldn't think of a name, so he decided to take one character from each of his sister's name. Ah. Good. Zhou Shuxin subconsciously nodded. In fact, she was still in shock. What was happening before her eyes felt like a dream. Not only was Xiaofan treated respectfully by Solitary Wolf, but he also made the young master of the Ren family in the provincial capital kneel down. The more she thinks about it, the more incredible it seems to Zhou Shuxin. She feels like she can't figure out Xiaofan anymore. How did he manage to become such a big shot in just 5 years? Grandma. Ning Fan smiled and said, I'll go first, I still have some things to take care of. Zhou's grandmother nodded, go. Xiaofan, Grandma is proud of you. She originally thought that Xiaofan still needed to be protected like a young eagle under her wing, but now Zhou's grandmother realizes that she is getting old and it is Xiaofan's turn to protect her. That's right. How could her son be an ordinary person? Thinking about that woman, Mrs. Zhou's eyes became complicated. Ning Fan. Ning Fan stopped in his tracks and looked at Mrs. Zhou. Grandma, what's wrong? Mrs. Zhou whispered, after you're done with your errands, come back to the old house. Grandma will tell you something then. You've grown up, and it's time you knew. Ning Fan's body trembled slightly, and then he nodded, yes, I know, Grandma. He already guessed what his grandmother wanted to tell him. Afterwards, he turned around and got straight into Lone Wolf's car. Old Lady Zhou and Zhou Shuxin also turned around and entered the Zhou family mansion, not even looking at the Zhou family members who were still in shock and unable to respond. Ren Feiyu gave Ning Fan's back a resentful look and left as well. On the other side of the road, Lone Wolf drove Ning Fan directly towards the auction house. However, just as the car reached the fast lane, a car suddenly accelerated and rushed towards them like crazy. Damn it! Lone Wolf's pupils contracted and he swore, damn it, is this person crazy, looking for death? He couldn't help but curse, if he was looking for death, why did he pick on his car? Now Mr. Ning is still in the car, if anything happens to him, he'll be finished. Seeing that the two cars were about to collide, the other car suddenly swerved and stopped in front of Lone Wolf's car, but it also happened to block Ning Fan and their way. Then, a girl jumped out of it, her perfect figure outlined by the leather jacket. However, at this moment, the look in her eyes as she looked at Lone Wolf was full of murderous intent and hatred. Are you fucking sick? The Lone Wolf got out of the car angrily, pointed at her and cursed, do I have a grudge against you? If it weren't because you're a woman, I would have killed you already. Bang! However, as soon as he finished speaking, the girl kicked the Lone Wolf in the stomach, and then he slammed hard onto the car's hood. The intense pain made the Lone Wolf's face contort in agony. We do have a grudge. The girl spoke, her eyes full of hatred, Lone Wolf, you killed my whole family, and now it's time to pay the price. On hearing this, Ning Fan frowned. Lone Wolf had actually wiped out someone's whole family? Are you sick? Lone Wolf held himself together and cursed. The girl raised her voice and gritted her teeth, Zheng family? Do you remember? Boom! These two words fell, and Lone Wolf was shocked. You are Zhang Wanming's daughter, Zheng Qiqi? When this name was mentioned, all the previous events came flooding back to Lone Wolf's mind. It seems you really do remember. Zheng Qiqi gritted her teeth and said hatefully, you butcher, you killed my parents, and now I will avenge my parents. The murderous intent and hatred in her body could not be contained, and she slowly moved closer to Lone Wolf. Mr. Ning, you go over there first. The lone wolf spoke, "I will settle this matter and then take you to the auction. We will make it in time." Ningfan nodded, and he had no intention of getting involved. "Ha! Lone wolf, do you think I am still the little girl I was before?" Zheng Qiqi said coldly, "You deserve to die." She approached the lone wolf, a dagger appeared in her palm, and she stabbed the lone wolf directly, fast, accurate, and ruthless. Lone wolf reached out to block it, but Zheng Qiqi was exceptionally strong, and in an instant, his pupils contracted and panic appeared. "It's over. Could it be that I'm going to die here today?" However, just as the dagger was about to fall around his neck, suddenly, a golden light enveloped him and stopped the dagger. Zheng Qiqi was shocked. How is this possible? Chapter 127, It Still Works on Me. Zheng Qiqi had used all her strength in this attack. However, when it landed on the golden light around Lone Wolf, only sparks flew up, and it was unable to pierce through. This technique that seemed to be divine made Zheng Qiqi's heart tremble. When did Lone Wolf learn such a technique? In fact, not only was Zheng Qiqi dumbfounded, at the moment, even Lone Wolf was dumbfounded when he saw this weak golden light in front of him. How could this appear on him? The next moment, he suddenly felt a burning sensation in his thigh. Lone Wolf reached into his trouser pocket and saw that only half of the yellow talisman he had put there was left. The other half had already burned to ashes, and the remaining half was still burning, visibly turning to ashes before his eyes. "I just don't believe I can't kill you." Zheng Qiqi's eyes were full of murderous intent as she gripped the dagger and kept stabbing at Lone Wolf. "You must die today." At this moment, the golden light in front of Lone Wolf was already growing weaker and weaker. He gritted his teeth and attacked Zheng Qiqi. But he had no idea what had happened to Zheng Qiqi over the years, and he was no match for her at all. "Mr. Ning." Seeing that the golden light on his body was about to disappear completely, Lone Wolf panicked and said, "Do you still have any yellow talismans in your hands? Please give me 2 more. Previously, he had never believed what Ningfan had said, that a single yellow talisman could protect him from a fatal blow. Now, what had happened had completely shattered his preconceptions. No wonder Wang Ye treated Mr. Ning with such respect. It turned out that Mr. Ning really did have the means. He also believed what Ningfan had said. A talisman that could protect one's life was selling for 1,000,000 yuan each, which was practically a bargain. If it were put up for auction, it would definitely attract the mad rush of those rich people. After all, no one is afraid of death. There is none. Ningfan shook his head and said, "That's the only one." In an instant, the lone wolf's face turned pale and he trembled violently. "It's over, it's over. Mr. Ning doesn't even have one of these amulets in his hands? Am I going to die here today? Regret." If he had known that this amulet was really effective, he would have bought a few more from Mr. Ning, so that even if he could only drag himself over here, he would have someone to save him. At this moment, the golden light on his body grew weaker and weaker, and it looked like it was about to disappear. The yellow talisman was also reduced to a tiny piece, and it was about to turn into ashes. Ningfan suddenly spoke up, "Later, you will buy the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb at the auction and give it to me. I will save your life." He had already seen that Lone Wolf was no match for the girl, and if things continued like this, Lone Wolf would surely die. "Mr. Ning, you're joking." Lone Wolf smiled bitterly, "You don't have that amulet in your hands, and you can't even save your own life, so how can you save me?" He said, gritting his teeth, "You drive away first, I will buy you some time, I don't want to drag you down because of my problems." In his opinion, Ningfan is at most a high-level person who knows a bit about talismans. Now that he doesn't have a talisman in his hands, how can he save himself? You have to know. Even I can't deal with that Zheng Qiqi. Moreover, Lone Wolf doesn't want to implicate Ningfan. If something happens to him on this side of Hong County, Lone Wolf is afraid that the people behind Ningfan will not let go of his family. Zheng Qiqi. Then, Lone Wolf turned around and shouted, "One person does one thing, and this is a grudge between you and me. I hope you won't involve Mr. Ning in this matter." Ningfan couldn't help but give him another look. "Don't worry." Zheng Qiqi resented, "I won't involve innocent people in this matter." Just as she finished speaking, the golden light on Lone Wolf's body completely disappeared and turned to nothing. The Lone Wolf took a deep breath, blocking Ningfan in front of him, trying to buy Ningfan some time to escape. However, Zheng Qiqi's attack was a killing move, and in order to kill him, he didn't even resist for long, and was injured all over. As Zheng Qiqi's dagger was about to land on the Lone Wolf's neck, Ning Fan suddenly appeared in front of the lone wolf and flicked his finger to knock the dagger away. Mr. Ning, you. Wolf looked at Ning Fan, who was standing in front of him, and anxiously asked, why didn't you escape? I delayed for you for so long, and why did you get in my way? If you get involved in this matter, she definitely won't let you go. Wolf was about to die of impatience. He even cursed in his heart, Ning Fan is such a fool. I risked my life to buy him time, but he not only doesn't escape, he even fights back. Does he want to die? Get out of the way. Zheng Qiqi gritted her teeth and stared at Ning Fan, coldly saying, this is a grudge between him and me. I will kill Lone Wolf and leave, I won't touch you. In her opinion, Ning Fan, at his age, was able to be treated respectfully by Lone Wolf, so he must be the kind of uneducated rich second generation. How could such a person stop her? You can't kill him now. Ning Fan said calmly, Lone Wolf is still useful to me. He wants Lone Wolf to take him to the auction house, and Lone Wolf is also useful to him in other ways. He must die. Zheng Qiqi raised her voice in resentment and said, I have finally found an opportunity to get him alone, and he must die here today. No one can save him. If you get in my way, I will kill you too. Her hatred for Lone Wolf was already engraved in her heart, and this hatred of being annihilated by the clan had made her wake up countless times in nightmares. Now that she has finally seized such an opportunity, how can she give it up? Ning Fan frowned, I know that Lone Wolf has a grudge against you and your family, and I shouldn't have interfered, but with me here today, Lone Wolf cannot die. A man like Lone Wolf is not worth dying for. But now he is still useful, so of course Ning Fan cannot let him die. Do you really think I dare not kill you? Zheng Qiqi said coldly, fine. In that case, you can go to hell with Lone Wolf. Dal panicked, gritted his teeth and shouted, Zheng Qiqi, it was your father and the others who coveted my position back then and tried to poison me. After I realized what was going on, I took action and disabled them, I didn't kill them. He didn't want to explain, because he knew that even if he did, Zheng Qiqi wouldn't believe him. But now Mr. Ning is resented by Zheng Qiqi. If he doesn't explain, Mr. Ning is going to be finished. I don't care about that. Zheng Qiqi hated and said, I only know that my parents died because of you. At this time, she had already appeared in front of Ning Fan, and she was about to stab the dagger into Ning Fan's heart. Lone Wolf's pupils contracted, Mr. Ning, be careful. However, Ning Fan just raised his hand and easily blocked the dagger. With a bang, Zheng Qiqi took a few steps back and her face turned pale as paper. Ning Fan said indifferently, do you want to attack again? Chapter 128 Temple. Zheng Qiqi's face was ugly, clenching the dagger tightly, and there was more hatred in her eyes as she looked at Ning Fan. Lone Wolf was also shocked. He originally thought that Mr. Ning was just an expert who could make amulets, but he didn't expect him to be so strong, and he was able to knock Zheng Qiqi back that far with just a hand movement. Thinking about it, he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh bitterly. Just a moment ago he was still worried about Mr. Ning's safety. Leave. Ning Fan said calmly, I won't kill you. He had no grudges against her, so naturally he would not kill her. If Lone Wolf was still useful to him, Ning Fan would not have gotten involved in this matter. No. Zheng Qiqi gritted her teeth, blood flowing from her lips. I have finally seized such an opportunity. It is absolutely impossible to find Lone Wolf alone again. I must kill him today. After these words, she raised her feet again and charged forward, only this time she had learned her lesson and bypassed Ning Fan's body, stabbing the dagger at Lone Wolf's heart. Bang! Ning Fan raised his palm again and said coldly, I told you. Lone Wolf cannot die today. If you continue to be so stubborn, I don't mind crippling you so that you won't even have a chance to take revenge in the future. Upon hearing this, Zheng Qiqi's body trembled and she looked at Ning Fan unwillingly. Leave. Ning Fan said, lightly, go back and practice more, you still have a chance to take revenge. Zheng Qiqi turned around. She knew that with Ning Fan there today, she would not be able to kill Lone Wolf, and tears welled up in her eyes. She had suffered so much to become so skilled, and had waited so long for the moment when Lone Wolf was alone. She had thought that she would be able to kill Lone Wolf this time. She never expected that the person accompanying Lone Wolf this time would be so powerful that she could hardly breathe. Suddenly, she thought of something and turned her head, staring at Ning Fan fiercely, can I ask you for a favor? Ning Fan frowned, what is it? Zheng Qiqi gritted her teeth and said, if you have time, can you accompany me to Ming City? Ning Fan shook his head, I don't have time. He didn't even know this Zheng Qiqi, so naturally he wasn't going to waste time with her. Don't refuse yet. Zheng Qiqi spoke. 3 years ago, I was just an ordinary person. But after my family was destroyed, I fled to the Mingcheng mountains and obtained a book in front of a dilapidated temple, so now I have the strength to be able to kill Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf's body shook. No wonder Zheng Qiqi has become so powerful in 3 years. It turns out that she had an adventure. Ningfan said indifferently, in my opinion, you are just an ordinary person now. Zheng Qiqi gritted her teeth and said, I know. But I want to tell you that I obtained that book from the most peripheral position outside the temple, and it seems that something is guarding it inside. Over the past 3 years, I have tried every means possible, but I have never been able to enter. However, during those 3 years, I could occasionally hear strange sounds coming from inside. Therefore, I would like to invite you to go with me to that temple in Ming City sometime to see what is inside. As she spoke, her gaze fell on Lone Wolf, and a cold murderous intent welled up within her. If I can obtain something even better, then even if there are many people around him, I can still kill him. The belief that is now supporting Zheng Qiqi to live is to kill Lone Wolf to avenge her parents. Zheng Qiqi continued, if there really is something even better inside, you can take what interests you and is useful to you first, and leave the rest to me. Temple? Strange sounds? Ningfan pondered for a moment, then nodded, okay. I'll go with you to Ming City when I have time. He was interested in what Zheng Qiqi had said. If it was just an ordinary temple, Zheng Qiqi would not have been unable to enter it for 3 years. Zheng Qiqi nodded, where should I wait for you? Ningfan said calmly, stay in Hong County for now, and wait to go back to Jiangcheng with me. After I'm done with my work, I'll go to the temple with you. Zheng Qiqi spent 3 years trying to get in, and there was no rush. Good. Zheng Qiqi held her head high, then she turned and left. Finally, she was gone. The Lone Wolf saw Zheng Qiqi turn to leave and let out a relieved sigh. He almost died here. The Lone Wolf respectfully thanked him, thank you, Mr. Ning, for saving my life. At this moment, he was truly convinced by Ningfan, and definitely would not dare to have any impudent thoughts. After all, this Mr. Ning was really amazing. Not only could he casually draw on a yellow talisman and turn it into an amulet that could ward off a fatal blow, but he also had such formidable strength. It could be said that the Lone Wolf had already thought of submitting to Ningfan. If he became this Mr. Ning's man, wouldn't it be easy for him to enter Jiangcheng in the future? Do you still remember the conditions I just told you? Ningfan casually glanced at Lone Wolf and said indifferently, I'll save you, and you buy the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb for me at the auction later. Lone Wolf's breathing stopped for a moment. A 200-year-old wild medicinal herb is extremely rare and can definitely sell for an astronomical price. But soon, Lone Wolf thought about Ningfan's identity and strength, and the fact that he had really saved his life. A moment later, Lone Wolf gritted his teeth and said, fine. Mr. Ning, I promise you, I will buy the century-old wild medicinal herb and give it to you later. Even if it is to please you, Mr. Ning. It's just that. The Lone Wolf felt some remorse in his heart. It was all his own fault. Why did he question the amulet drawn by Mr. Ning for no reason? Otherwise, buying a few more would not have resulted in this situation. Mr. Ning, please get in the car. Duwang respectfully said, the auction will start soon. Ningfan nodded. Then the two of them headed towards the auction. As Duwang had said, this auction would be held on the top floor of a shopping mall in Hong County. At auctions like this, there are usually a lot of people. When Ningfan and Duwang arrived, there were already quite a few people sitting inside the auction venue. At this time, many people noticed Duwang. When they saw how respectfully Lone Wolf was guiding Ningfan, many people were stunned. Lone Wolf was the boss of the underground world in Hong County, but what kind of big shot was worthy of such treatment? Soon, they deeply remembered Ningfan's face. Not long after, Ningfan and Lone Wolf took their seats. Mr. Ning, Lone Wolf said respectfully, the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb is the final auction item. The auction quickly began. The previous auction items were not worthy of Ningfan's attention. An hour later, the auction came to an end, with only the last item left. The auctioneer appeared pushing a small cart covered in a red cloth. A strong aura. Ningfan instantly opened his eyes burning with excitement. It is even more concentrated than the Ta Sui, truly a 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. Chapter 129, Overdoing It. Ningfan was a little excited. At this moment, after actually seeing this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb, he finally felt at ease. He never expected that such an industrial city as Hong County would actually have this kind of supreme medicinal herb. It's unbelievable. Ning Fan murmured, saying that logically, the pollution here is serious, and the aura contained in the air could not possibly have cultivated such supreme medicinal herbs. Could it be that there are other secrets in this Hong County? The more he thought about it, the more Ning Fan felt that there might be some truth to it. He planned to take this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb and examine it carefully. A 200-year-old wild medicinal herb is a rare find. At this time, the auctioneer on the stage smiled slightly and said, "Now that we have unearthed one in Hong County, we are honored that our auction house can take it here for auction. I believe everyone knows the uses of this supreme medicinal herb, so I won't say any more than that." The auction will now begin. The starting price is 1 million. This price is already a very low starting price for this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. 2 million. 4 million. 10 million. Very quickly, the price of this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb broke the 10 million mark. Sitting next to Ning Fan, Lone Wolf couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Damn it! He had long known that the price of this supreme medicinal herb was high, but he really didn't expect it to be so high, to the tune of over 10 million. Moreover, the price is still rising, and this time he really has to cut his losses. It's killing him. But there's no way around it. Who let him already promise Ning Fan? If he changes his mind at this time, then his impression in Mr. Ning's eyes will definitely be reduced. At that time, not to mention pleasing him, I'm afraid I'll offend him in disguise. Thinking about it, Lone Wolf got up directly and gritted his teeth and set a price, 20 million. Wow! For a moment, everyone's gaze fell on the Lone Wolf, and no one expected the Lone Wolf to add 10 million directly. Soon, everyone in the auction hall hesitated. This price was too high. Most of them were businessmen from this small county. If they spent 20 million to buy something like this, their company would be completely finished. Seeing this scene, the Lone Wolf let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the price he called shocked these people. Then, a smile appeared on his face. No one else was bidding, so should he announce the ownership of this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb? The auctioneer nodded, and she was about to hammer the hammer down. Wait! At this time, a heavenly voice sounded from the entrance of the auction hall, and then everyone looked and saw a person wrapped in a tightly fitting garment appear in their line of sight. The voice just now came from this person's mouth, and she is a woman. And behind the woman is an old man with white hair and beard. At this moment, seeing these two people, Lone Wolf's eyes looked down unhappily, and a bad feeling emerged in his heart. I bid 50 million. The woman spoke again, suddenly shouting out a sky-high price. In an instant, the entire auction hall fell into dead silence, and everyone stared at her with wide eyes. 50 million. This is 30 million more than Lone Wolf's bid. Who is this woman? Even Lone Wolf's face paled. What's going on? There was no choice. He gritted his teeth and shouted, 51 million. At this moment, his gaze at the woman was full of anger. Lone Wolf had saved up for so long to get 60 million. Now, because of this woman's frivolous words, he had lost so much. Lone Wolf was about to die of a broken heart. The woman glanced at Lone Wolf and said indifferently, "You can bid more, but if you do, I'll go for 200 million. I'm determined to get this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb today." Lone Wolf's face turned ashen. 100 million? How could he possibly bid more than that? He had a bare 60 million in his bank card, and he was about to go crazy. Who the hell was this woman? When did Hong County produce such a wealthy person? He was about to get his hands on the 20 million wild medicinal herbs, but now because of this woman, his plan was all going to waste. Mr. Ning. Dao laughed bitterly, "This woman is too rich, I really can't compete with her." He now just hoped that Ning Fan would not blame himself. Ning Fan glanced at the woman and naturally knew that the 100 million yuan far exceeded the price of the 200-year-old wild medicinal herbs. Moreover, he probably guessed the identities of the three people as well, people from outside Hong County. They were the people from the family who had previously sought treatment from the Western doctors. Is there any more bidding? At this moment, the auctioneer on the stage excitedly said, "If there is no more bidding, then this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb will belong to this lady." There was silence in the auction hall. Bang! the hammer fell to the ground, confirming the ownership of the herb. Very quickly. The auctioneer then stepped forward and respectfully handed the herb to the woman. Please take it. The woman nodded, thank you. Then she turned to the old man and said in a hurried voice, Old Lin, now that I have won the bid for this 200-year-old wild herb, shouldn't you be able to cure me? Yes. This woman had bid on the herb in order to cure herself. Miss Luo, don't worry. The old man stroked his beard and laughed. Now that I have this herb, I can naturally cure you. Upon hearing this, Luo Mengyao became excited. Great. I really need to trouble you this time, Lin Lao. If you can cure me, I will definitely thank you properly. Lin Meng waved his hand and laughed. It's a trivial matter. Subsequently, the three of them paid and then planned to leave. However, just then, Ningfan suddenly walked towards them and calmly said, This 200-year-old wild medicinal herb cannot cure you. If you even eat this herb, you will die directly. In an instant, Luo Mengyao and the other were speechless. The next moment, she reacted and angrily said, What do you mean? Are you cursing me? No. Ningfan shook his head and laughed. Miss, I'm just telling the truth. Luo Mengyao stared coldly at Ningfan. Lin Meng's face looked unpleasant. So does this young man mean to question me? Ningfan said calmly, This kind of top-grade wild medicinal herb is a great tonic. If I'm not wrong, this young lady has red spots rising on her face, and they are spreading to every corner of her body. I wonder, am I right? Upon hearing this, Luo Mengyao's body shook, and Lin Meng was also shocked as he looked at Ningfan. She was wrapped up tightly, so how did this man know? You've overdone it with the tonics. Ningfan said calmly, If you eat the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb again to strengthen your body, it will make your condition worse, until you die. Chapter 130, The Big Star. Luo Mengyio's body trembled. How did you know? Luo Mengyio stared at Ningfan. I was wrapped up so tightly. Ningfan calmly said, I naturally have my own methods to be able to tell what your condition is. Miss, I can save you. He didn't wait for Luo Mengyio to speak, and continued, But you need to give me the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb, how about that? For this medicinal herb, Ningfan would not give it up easily. After all, it was one of the ingredients for his spirit-gathering formation, and it was too important. Luo Mengyao frowned. She looked at Ningfan with suspicion in her eyes. Such a man who suddenly appeared in front of her, accurately stating her illness and saying that he could save her. Is this for real? Wait. Lin Meng suddenly stared at Ningfan and said, I want to know how you knew exactly what symptoms Miss Luo would have. At this time, Luo Mengyao also looked at Ningfan with a puzzled expression in her eyes. She also wanted to know. Ningfan smiled. Traditional Chinese medicine emphasizes observation, listening, questioning, and cutting. I think you should understand if I say it like this, right? Ever since Luo Mengyao and the other entered and started bidding, Ningfan had already used the Zijin Divine Eye to see through her. However, naturally he could not say anything about the Zijin Divine Eye, so he could only come up with a plausible excuse like this. You are too young. Lin Meng shook his head and doubted, I don't quite believe that you would be that good at learning Chinese medicine. Have you investigated Miss Luo and deliberately approached her? In an instant, Luo Mengyao's body trembled, and she looked at Ningfan with an unfriendly expression. Her identity was relatively special, and once the news of her disfigurement spread, her career would be over for life. Ningfan frowned, I don't know what you're talking about. My goal is only the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. I don't know anything else, and I've never heard of any Miss Luo. Miss Luo? At this moment, the lone wolf, who was following Ningfan, couldn't help but mutter softly, this woman's voice, why do I suddenly feel so familiar with it? It's like I've heard it somewhere before. Wait, are you Luo Mengyao? Suddenly, the lone wolf thought of something and stared wide-eyed at Luo Mengyao, the big star Luo Mengyao? At this moment, he realized that the voice of the woman in front of him was very similar to that of Luo Mengyao. No, it was even the same. It was just that at first he didn't believe that such a famous celebrity would appear in Hong County, so he didn't think about her. Still saying that you haven't investigated Miss Luo? Lin Meng's face turned cold. Didn't you recognize her at once? You guys don't have to act anymore, although I don't know what your real intentions are, please don't alarm people with your words. Miss Luo has not over-medicated at all. I will use this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb to cure Miss Luo. Ning Fan was also surprised as he looked at the tightly wrapped woman. He never expected her to be the hottest celebrity Luo Mengyao. Miss Luo. Lin Meng spoke to Luo Mengyao, let's leave first, and let me hurry and cure you. You cannot trust this person's words. Luo Mengyao also looked at Ning Fan with disappointment and nodded, well, okay, Lin Lao, thank you. Afterwards, the two turned around and planned to leave. Ning Fan frowned. If he missed this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb this time, he would not know when he could find this kind of supreme medicinal herb again. Wait. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked at Luo Mengyao. Is it true that you have unbearable pain every night until the middle of the night? Those red spots give you excruciating pain? Not only that, but even your periods are extremely irregular and abnormal, aren't they? Upon hearing this, Luo Mengyao's body trembled. She hadn't even told Lin Meng about this kind of thing, so how did this man know exactly what was going on? You can let me try. Ning Fan said calmly, you've already tried many ways to cure yourself, so it's not a big deal to let me try this once, right? If Luo Mengyao didn't have what he wanted in her hands, Ning Fan wouldn't even look at her twice before leaving directly. He hesitated. At this moment, Luo Mengyao looked at Ning Fan with hesitation in her eyes. After a moment, she gritted her teeth and said, okay. I can give it a try. Then, she turned her head to Lin Meng and said, Old Lin, I think he should be quite capable. Why don't you let him give it a try? If he can't cure my illness, you can step in, okay? She didn't want to offend Lin Meng, so naturally she had to explain to him. Lin Meng didn't say anything and nodded in agreement, but he didn't believe that Ning Fan would be able to cure Luo Mengyao's illness. In his opinion, Ning Fan must have other motives for getting close to Luo Mengyao. Soon, Ning Fan and the others left the auction and went to a villa in the city of Hong County. This was Lone Wolf's home. As soon as he entered the villa, Ning Fan saw a poster in the center of the hall, and the woman on the poster was Luo Mengyao. There were also many small photos of Luo Mengyao in other corners. Not only him, but the two of them also saw it. Ha. Lone Wolf scratched his head and laughed, I'm a fan of Miss Luo, so I was able to hear Miss Luo's voice for the first time at the auction. Ning Fan was speechless. He never imagined that the bodyguard, who was the boss of the underground world in Hong County, was actually a fan of Luo Mengyao. He thought that people like him would not be childish and like any celebrity. At this time, Luo Mengyao's heart was shaken. Since that bodyguard was her fan, he was able to recognize her voice immediately. That also meant that Ning Fan and the others had not investigated her and did not have other motives for getting close to her. Perhaps they really just wanted the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. Okay. Ning Fan looked at Luo Mengyao, you can take off the overcoat now and let me see your condition. Luo Mengyao nodded. Then, with gentle movements, she took off the overcoat she was wearing, as well as the hat, gloves, sunglasses, and other items. Immediately afterwards, her entire face and perfect figure fell into the eyes of the two of them. Holy shit! After seeing Luo Mengyao's face, Lone Wolf couldn't help but swear, his eyes wide, how could this be? Even Ning Fan frowned, this Luo Mengyao's condition was even more serious than he had imagined. Her face was covered in red spots, which looked very scary. Mr. Ning. Luo Mengyao's eyes were dull and nervous, can you really cure me? Chapter 131 In my eyes, you are the patient. Yes. Ning Fan nodded and said bluntly, I will write a prescription now, and let this old gentleman go buy those medicinal herbs. Then buy some silver needles. Afterwards, he directly took out a piece of paper, wrote the prescription, and handed it to Lin Meng. Lin Meng took it, glanced at the medicinal herbs on the prescription, frowned, and said, okay. I can go buy these medicinal herbs back. Lin Meng left. The Lone Wolf looked at Ning Fan and asked doubtfully, Mr. Ning, do you also know medicine? Ning Fan nodded, more or less. At this, the Lone Wolf was shocked. Not only could Mr. Ning make amulets, he was also so strong. Now he even knows medicine? Thinking about it, the Lone Wolf couldn't help but smack his lips. Was Mr. Ning really only in his 20s? He was about to feel that Mr. Ning was not human. How could there be such a big difference between people? Soon, just 20 minutes passed, and Lin Meng returned, this time carrying a black plastic bag in his hands. A strong medicinal fragrance permeated from it. These are the medicinal herbs and silver needles. Lin Meng tossed it to Ning Fan and said, so, how are you going to cure Miss Luo's illness? Ningfan smiled and said, I have my own way. Lone Wolf, do you have a pot at home? Lone Wolf was stunned for a moment, and quickly said, there is one in the kitchen. Mr. Ning, you can use it freely. Ningfan nodded. He turned and entered the kitchen, which still had brand new kitchenware in it, and I don't think Lone Wolf has used any of it even once. Ningfan originally wanted to use a pot, but he saw a better casserole and his eyes sparkled. He then opened the lid of the casserole and threw in the herbs, a flame rising up, steaming the herbs in the oven. At the same time, Ningfan also activated the swallowing the sky technique. His fingertips touched the edge of the casserole, and a trace of spiritual energy flowed into it, mixing with the medicinal herbs. Before long, the kitchen was filled with the fragrance of medicine. Not only that, but Lone Wolf and the others even felt as if the temperature had dropped a few degrees. Their bodies felt cool. Boom! About half an hour later, there was an explosion in the kitchen, which immediately attracted the attention of Lone Wolf and the others. Mr. Ning. Duan was startled and hurriedly ran towards the kitchen. Are you okay? Entering the kitchen, he could feel the cooling sensation in the air more and more, and then he saw Ningfan. I'm fine. Ningfan waved his hand, looked at the broken casserole in front of him, and raised the corner of his mouth. He saw that the medicinal herbs that had originally been thrown into the casserole had now turned into a pale green liquid. But what was strange was that although this green liquid had clearly been heated in the casserole, there was not the slightest hint of heat coming from it. Even the cool feeling that Lone Wolf had sensed came from it. Mr. Ning. Lone Wolf also saw the pale green liquid and scratched his head, saying, Can this really cure Miss Luo's illness? Ningfan shook his head. It's not enough to just rely on this. This liquid only repels the red spots on her body. Her body has previously received too many supplements, causing her energy to become disordered. So I need to regulate her body. Then using silver needles and massage, I will push out the excess, and her physical condition can be completely cured. The Lone Wolf nodded with a knowing expression. Oh, I see. Then he hurriedly said, Then please quickly heal Miss Luo. Ningfan nodded, then took a cup and filled it with the green liquid, before leaving the kitchen with Lone Wolf. Mr. Ning. Luo Mengyao got up. Are you ready? Lin Meng also turned her head at this time and saw the green liquid in Ningfan's hands. Her eyebrows furrowed. What is this? Could it be the medicinal herbs he just bought? Yes. Ningfan nodded, come upstairs with me. Luo Mengyao nodded, okay. She lifted her heel to keep up with Ningfan's footsteps and soon reached the stairs. It's just that. At this moment, Ningfan suddenly turned around and looked at Lone Wolf and Lin Meng. You two wait below. The treatment method later is not convenient for you to see. Lin Meng frowned. What treatment method can't they see? Kid. I advise you not to get any funny ideas. Lin Meng warned, Miss Luo is not just a celebrity. If you dare to have evil thoughts about Miss Luo, the people behind her will not let you go. Ningfan said indifferently, Don't worry. Luo Mengyao gritted her teeth, but she still followed Ningfan. Ever since she learned that Lone Wolf was able to recognize her voice because he was obsessed with her. She had thought about it at the auction. When Ningfan said his symptoms out loud, her mind wavered and she gradually began to believe in Ningfan. Moreover, she has also seen the way Ningfan looks at her. It is different from the lecherous way other men look at her. His gaze is clear. I hope this man can really work a miracle and cure me. Goodness. Dao watched Ningfan and Luo Mengyao go upstairs, smacking his lips and enviously saying, Big star, Mr. Ning is really lucky. Does being a doctor have such good treatment? Should I learn medicine too? What? Ningfan put down his cup and looked at Luo Mengyao. You have red spots all over your body. And I need to apply this essence to your body, so you need to cooperate with me. And take off your clothes. Tell the truth. Ningfan had seen Luo Mengyao's healthy appearance before, and she was definitely a beauty, on a par with Tang Chuchu. And these big stars were unattainable for him back then, and now he had to ask such a big star to cooperate and take off her clothes. Ningfan was still a little embarrassed. Ha! Luo Mengyao opened her mouth, her teeth biting her lower lip, as if she were hesitating. If it weren't for the red spots on her face, I'm afraid her face would have turned scarlet by now. Ningfan quickly waved his hand to explain, Don't worry, in my eyes you are the patient. And, I will definitely not tell anyone about this. And, I can also guarantee that I will definitely be able to cure your illness. If Luo Mengyao's fans knew that I had made Luo Mengyao take off her clothes, I'm afraid they would all hate themselves for doing so. Puff. Luo Mengyao looked up at this time and saw that Ning Fan's face was slightly red, and she couldn't help but laugh. Moreover, she also saw Ning Fan's eyes, which were still crystal clear. For a moment, she had an indescribable feeling in her heart, both happy and uncomfortable. Okay. Luo Mengyao nodded. I will cooperate with you and take off my clothes now. Chapter 132 looks more nervous than me? Very quickly, Luo Mengyao gently took off her clothes. Just as Ningfan said, she was covered in red spots all over her body. Although she already knew that Ningfan was not the type of lecherous person, Luo Mengyao, who was taking off her clothes in front of a man for the first time, couldn't help but bite her lower lip lightly. Ha! Ningfan let out a sigh of relief. Sin. It was impossible for a big star to undress in front of him and for him not to react, but the most important thing now was to cure Luo Mengyao first and get the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. Lie down on the bed. Ningfan pointed his finger. I'll apply the medicinal liquid. Luo Mengyao didn't hesitate at all, and nodded directly. Okay. She walked straight to the edge of the bed, lay down, and showed Ningfan her back. Ningfan placed the cup of medicinal liquid by the edge of the bed, lightly tapped his fingers, and then his movements fell softly on Luo Mengyao's back. Although her back was also covered in those red spots, it had to be said that her back was really smooth. It was like baby skin, and it felt really good to the touch. A seductive sound escaped from Luo Mengyao's mouth, instantly making the fire in Ningfan's lower abdomen even more intense. Such a big star is even more seductive than Wangya. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not different from emptiness, emptiness is not different from form. Ningfan kept murmuring, reciting a mantra to purify his mind and suppress the fire. Puff. Luo Mengyao, who had been very nervous, suddenly burst out laughing after hearing these words from Ningfan. Why do you look even more nervous than I am? Then she flirted, you're not still a virgin, are you? Ningfan's face instantly turned black, and he said viciously, if you keep chatting like this, I'll do something bad. Good. Who knew? Luo Mengyao narrowed her eyes and smiled, let me see you do something bad. Ningfan's mouth twitched. This woman is really a demon. She really wants him to do bad things. She really thinks he's a saint. Okay, I'll stop talking. Luo Mengyao giggled, I won't tease you anymore, just heal me. Ningfan took a deep breath, ignored Luo Mengyao again, and smeared the medicinal liquid on Luo Mengyao's back. However, with Luo Mengyao's flirting just now, the atmosphere in the room was not so awkward. Very quickly, Ningfan smeared all the medicinal liquid on Luo Mengyao's body, then placed the silver needles on her body and gave her a massage. Some black impurities flowed out of Luo Mengyao's body pores. The medicinal liquid on her body had already solidified. Ningfan withdrew his gaze and instructed, don't wash it for 2 days. After 2 days, all the red spots on your body and face will disappear. Also, I have forced out all the excess nutrients in your body, so as long as you don't eat indiscriminately in the future, this will not happen again. Luo Mengyao nodded. Don't mention it. Ever since Ningfan smeared the medicinal liquid on her body and gave her a massage, she really felt that her body was much more comfortable. There was no longer the unbearable tingling sensation she had felt before. Thinking about this, she couldn't help but get excited. Did it really work this time? Since she suddenly became seriously ill 2 months ago, her career has almost come to a standstill. For a big star like her, 2 months of not being in the public eye will soon be forgotten. That is why she is anxious to get better. However, Mr. Ning, there is one thing I don't understand. Luo Mengyao frowned and said, you know my identity, I am a celebrity, and in order to maintain my figure, I always eat very little, so there should be no such thing as overnutrition. This is also a point of confusion for Ningfan. You should have developed symptoms 2 months ago. Ningfan glanced at Luo Mengyao and frowned, saying, before that, what did you eat? Luo Mengyao thought carefully and told him everything she had eaten during that period of time. Hearing this, Ningfan realized and said lightly, if you eat it on its own every day, you won't be able to tell that there is any excess nutrition. However, if you eat the two together over time, it will block your digestive system and this is what will happen. Miss Luo, Ningfan said, looking deeply at Luo Mengyao, I advise you to investigate this matter after you go down. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't even know how you died in the end. Luo Mengyao's face turned ugly. She's not stupid, and now with just a hint from Ningfan, she understands. She has many competitors, and even those in the same company will fight to the death. If someone uses such a method against her, as Ningfan said, she won't even know how she died in the end. Thank you, Mr. Ning. Luo Mangyao took a deep breath and thanked him, saying, I will definitely investigate this matter after I go down. Ningfan nodded, and he only reminded Luo Mangyao for the sake of the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. As for whether she would investigate, it was none of his business. After Luo Mangyao got dressed, they walked out and saw the two men, Lone Wolf and Lin Meng, pacing back and forth in the hall. Hearing footsteps at this moment, the two of them instantly turned their heads and looked at Ningfan. Mr. Ning. Dao walked up quickly. How is it? Have you cured Miss Luo? As he spoke, he glanced at Luo Mangyao's face, which was covered in pale green liquid, and beneath that, red spots. No different from before. It will take 2 days. Ningfan laughed. There's no way to remove the red spots that have already imprinted on the skin. Suddenly, Luo Mangyao thought of something. Mr. Ning, I don't think the red spots will leave scars or anything, right? Ningfan shook his head. No. What did you look like before you got seriously ill? That's what your skin will look like after the red spots disappear. After hearing Ningfan's affirmative reply, Luo Mangyao let out a long breath. That's good, you scared me. Lin Meng watched Luo Mangyao's attitude towards Ningfan and frowned. Is this kid really quite capable? Can he remove the red spots on Luo Mangyao's body? And without leaving any scars? Lin Meng doesn't quite believe in such a thing, because in his memory, no Chinese medicine practitioner has ever been able to do this. How can this young man in front of him, who looks to be only in his 20s, do it? Old Lin. Luo Mangyao looked at Lin Meng and smiled slightly, saying, Give Mr. Ning the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. It's no longer useful to us. She originally bought it to cure her own illness, but now that Ningfan has intervened, she obviously feels much more relaxed than before. Naturally, she won't need this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. No way. Lin Meng, however, refused, saying, Miss Luo, you can't give it to him yet. Chapter 133, Past Events. Old Lin. Luo Mangyao frowned and said, What are you doing? Lin Meng said bluntly, This kid may not be able to cure you, Miss Luo. What if he wants to use this as an excuse to trick you into giving him the 200-year-old herb? Miss Luo, if I don't have this 200-year-old wild herb, I won't be able to cure you. Therefore. Having said that, he glanced at Ningfan and said sternly, You can give him the 200-year-old wild herb. But not now, you need to wait until you have recovered from your illness. His concern was not unreasonable. Luo Mangyao frowned, looked at Ningfan, and hesitated. Mr. Ning, what do you think? Ningfan waved his hand and said, 2 days. In 2 days, the red spots on your body will completely disappear, and you will return to your previous state. I hope that by the 3rd day, I can see this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. Luo Mangyao is a big star, and Ningfan feels that she should be trustworthy. And even if she changes her mind in the end, Ningfan has the means to get back the 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. Good. Luo Mangyao nodded and thanked him, saying, Thank you, Mr. Ning, for understanding. Can I add you on WeChat? When the time comes, if my health has improved, then I can find you first and give you the herb. Ningfan nodded in agreement, and the two added each other as friends. By the way, Ningfan spoke up, I will leave Hong County tomorrow and go to Jiangcheng. Just call me when you arrive in Jiangcheng. Jiangcheng? Luo Mangyao nodded, okay. Afterwards, she took Lin Meng out of Ningfan's sight. Mr. Ning, are you leaving? Dulong looked at Ningfan and asked nervously. He hadn't had time to get along with Ningfan, so how could Mr. Ning leave? I have something to tell you. Ningfan glanced at the Lone Wolf and spoke indifferently. The Lone Wolf hurriedly said, Mr. Ning, you just tell me, I will do my best to take care of things for you. Ningfan continued, After I leave Hong County, go find the person who dug up this 200-year-old wild medicinal herb. Then ask him where he found it, and your task is to carefully search that area. If you find anything that doesn't seem quite right, remember to tell me first. As long as this is done, I will not treat you unfairly. Upon hearing this, the Lone Wolf was excited, and quickly said, Mr. Ning, please rest assured. I originally had no hope, but I didn't expect Mr. Ning to give me such an important task. It seems that I will be able to enter Jiangcheng soon. Ning Fan nodded, and then asked the lone wolf to take him to the Zhou family. Very quickly. He got off the car and stood in front of the Zhou family mansion. His eyes were a little complicated. He was prepared for what his grandmother wanted to tell him. Thinking about this, he took a deep breath and raised his feet, walking towards the Zhou family mansion. Without any obstacles, he arrived in the backyard of the mansion. In the moonlight, Ning Fan saw an old man sitting in a rocking chair next to a stone table, enjoying the cool breeze. The old man was precisely Madame Zhou. Ning Fan, are you done? Madame Zhou heard footsteps and turned around to see Ning Fan. She smiled kindly and said, "Come and sit, and keep me company." Ning Fan walked over to the stone table, sat down, and looked at the old lady. "Grandma, what do you want to tell me?" "Just." The old lady didn't bring it up directly, but smiled and said, "What do you think of me, Fan?" Without hesitation, Ning Fan said, "Kind and gentle. Someone who is good to me." As long as he can remember, the old lady has always been kind to him, and has never let him suffer. Even if people like Zhou bully him, they dare not do so in front of the old lady. Because they know that Granny Zhou will definitely protect them. "Xiao Fan, I hope you will never forget Granny in the future." Granny Zhou spoke, and then added something that made no sense. Ning Fan said bluntly, "Granny, I won't. Granny knows your character." Granny Zhou smiled kindly, but then she sighed and got to the point. "Xiao Fan, I'm sure you're prepared for this, so I'll tell you, in fact, I'm not your real granny. Your mother is not my daughter either." Upon hearing this, Ning Fan's body trembled. Even though he had long been prepared, he still couldn't help but feel a tug in his heart after hearing his grandmother's words. That was 15 years ago. Old Mrs. Zhou continued, her gaze directed at the provincial capital. "At that time, I wasn't feeling well, and the hospital couldn't find anything wrong with me. So I thought about going to the temple on Buguanshan in the provincial capital to burn some incense." Provincial capital. Buguanshan. Ning Fan remembered these two names, and once again looked at Mrs. Zhou, waiting for her to continue. "After I burned incense? I planned to leave like this, but the master in the temple stopped me. He told me that if I had good karma, my physical illness would naturally get better. I took the master's words to heart, and then walked down the mountain along the temple. At that time..." Old Lady Zhou's eyes filled with reminiscence. "It was a heavy rain, the road was very slippery, so your grandfather and I had to find a dilapidated house to take shelter from the rain. However, just as the rain was about to stop, a woman covered in blood appeared before us, dying. In her right hand, she was holding the hand of a 7-year-old boy, and in her arms she was carrying a 1-year-old baby girl, crying loudly." Ning Fan's heart pounded. If he guessed correctly, the woman was his mother, the boy was himself, and the baby was Xiaoqiu. He never imagined that 15 years ago, he and his mother had fallen into such a situation, covered in blood? "Yes." Old Lady Zhou continued, "The woman is your mother, the little boy is you, and the baby is Xiaoqiu. At that time, your grandfather didn't want to take care of the three of you. After all, you looked so scary at that time, and he was afraid of being implicated. However, I thought of the advice of the master in the temple, and with kind thoughts in my heart, I brought your mother and you back to the Zhou family." Ning Fan pursed his lips, but then he suddenly thought of something. "No." Ning Fan's pupils suddenly contracted, and he suddenly sat up. "Grandmother, was I already 7 years old at that time?" Old Mrs. Zhou nodded. "Yes, 7 years old." Ning Fan muttered softly, 7 years old. Why don't I have any memories of any of this? He tried to think of his memories before the age of 7, but just as he was about to touch the memories of the year he turned 7. Suddenly, his head felt like it was about to explode, and his headache was unbearable. Instantly, he put his hands around his head and convulsed. Chapter 134. Goodbye. I don't know what year or month it is. Xiaofan. Your memories before the age of 7 have been sealed by your mother. Until you can enter the 7th level of the 9-story glass pagoda with your spirit, do not forcibly touch the seal to unlock the sealed memories. In his mind, a heavenly voice sounded, otherwise, the consequences will be a mild concussion, your cultivation will be wasted, and you will be a useless person for the rest of your life, or in severe cases, you will lose your body and soul. Gradually, this voice disappeared. Mom! Ning Fan shouted, but this time the familiar figure did not appear in front of him. Fan! Old Lady Zhou was startled. What happened to you? Ning Fan gradually came to his senses. Breathing heavily and hoarsely, he said, Grandma, I'm fine. Did anything else happen after that? He desperately wanted to know information about his mother. After your mother brought you and Xiuqiu back to the Zhou family with me, she fainted. Old Lady Zhou said, when she woke up again, she had lost her memory and couldn't remember anything. After that, I adopted her as my daughter. At the beginning, you and your mother and sister appeared out of thin air in our Zhou family. I was afraid that you and Xiuqiu would be bullied and suffer psychological harm. I felt that without a father, you would feel inferior and have low self-esteem, so I never told you about it. And I also set a family rule in the Zhou family that no one was allowed to mention this matter. Ningfan was moved. As Grandma said, when they were young, he and Xiuqiu always thought that they didn't have a father, and were called bastards by others, so they were very inferior. If at that time they had known that even Grandma wasn't their real grandmother, then the young hearts of the Ningfan siblings would definitely have been hurt. So, Grandma. Ningfan pursed her lips and asked, when did my mother regain her memory? Old Lady Zhou recalled with a wistful look, the year you were taken away from Hong County, your mother recovered her memory. That year, after your mother recovered her memory, she cured my illness, and that's when I saw how extraordinary your mother's skills were. My stubborn illness could not even be detected by the hospital, but your mother completely eradicated it with just a few silver needles. The reason you can still see me now is because your mother cured me. I am very fortunate that I followed the words of the master at Mount Bu and had good intentions to save your mother and you back then, otherwise my old life would have long since returned to the West. As she spoke, Old Lady Zhou laughed. Who would have thought that a woman saved casually would become one's savior? This is perhaps what is meant by good deeds being rewarded. Grandma. Ningfan took a deep breath and asked, do you know my mother's name and background? How can a son not even know his own mother's name? Old Lady Zhou shook her head, I don't know. Hearing this, Ningfan was disappointed and let out a bitter laugh, even you don't know? Yes. Old Lady Zhou nodded, after your mother cured me back then, I asked your mother many times where she came from. What was her name? It's just that your mother was very wary of these kinds of things and even reminded me that if I knew these things, it would bring disaster to the Zhou family. Ningfan's body trembled. Disaster that wipes out the entire clan? Just knowing my mother's name and origin would result in such a crisis? Your mother, Zhou Rulan, was actually given that name by me. Old Madame Zhou said, during those days in Hong County, we also kept calling her by that name. As for her real name, I really don't know anything about it. Ningfan said disappointedly, is that so? Well, it seems that there is no way for me to obtain any information about my mother from my grandmother. But suddenly, Old Lady Zhou thought of something and looked at Ningfan and said, if you really want to know something about your mother, then you have time to go to Bugwanshan in the provincial capital. Bugwanshan? Ningfan frowned and said, Grandma, you're not saying that if my mother and I suddenly appeared there, the people of Bugwanshan would know something? He was a little confused. I'm not sure if Bugwanshan would know anything. Old Lady Zhou gave Ningfan a deep look, but what I do know is that, for 20 years in a row, the Bugwanshan had been continuously attended by worshippers, but on the day when you and your mother and brother appeared, it suddenly announced that it would be closed and no one would be seen there. Closed and no one would be seen there? And it happened to be the day when you and your mother and brother appeared? Ningfan's pupils contracted, how could there be such a coincidence? At that time, Old Lady Zhou continued, after your mother cured me, I wanted to take someone to Mount Bu Guanshan to thank the Master Kongshan who reminded me, but I didn't expect that when I got there, Mount Bu Guanshan was closed. After I came down the mountain, I met some residents near Mount Bu Guanshan and asked them why, and they told me that Mount Bu Guanshan had long since closed its doors, and the day it closed happened to be the day you and your mother appeared. I thought there was no such thing as a coincidence in the world, so I wanted to ask you to go and have a look at Mount Bu Guanshan. At this point, Ningfan's eyebrows wrinkled. The provincial capital, Mount Bu Guanshan? He took this name to heart, as it might hold some clues. He would need to go and have a look there when he had the time. However, at this time, Old Lady Zhou solemnly said, Fan, if you really plan to go to Mount Bu Guanshan, remember to be very, very careful. The last time Grandma went there, it had been almost 10 years since the gates of Bu Guanshan were closed. Once there is no sign of human life on the mountain, there will be many wild animals. Grandma doesn't want anything to happen to you because of this. Ningfan let out a breath and nodded, I know, Grandma. He didn't plan to go to Bu Guanshan right away. His strength was still very weak, and even if he knew his mother's name and her background, so what? I still won't be able to help my mother? Thinking about this, Ningfan took a deep breath. He knew he had to improve his strength as soon as possible, so that one day, when he met his parents, he could face danger with them. Moreover, in the letter that my mother left with the Yang family, she said that she might return to Jiangcheng to treat Xiaoqiu before she turned 16. And there are still 3 months until Xiaoqiu turns 16. Maybe by then he will be able to see his mother again. Xiao Fan. Old Lady Zhou suddenly looked at Ning Fan with mixed feelings in her eyes and said, "Your mother is no ordinary person, so I know that your future achievements will definitely not be low. I hope you won't take it personally with Zhou Yu and the others, okay? It was your grandfather who spoiled them, and I apologize to you on their behalf." Ning Fan was silent, and after a moment he sighed and nodded, "Okay, Grandma, I'll listen to you. As long as they don't provoke me anymore, then I won't take it personally with them." Ning Fan didn't want to make the elderly person in front of him, who had been very good to him, sad. Good, good, good. Old Mrs. Zhou said 3 times in a row, "Grandma knows you're a good boy. If you're ever wronged outside in the future, remember to come back to Hong County, where Grandma will always be waiting for you." Ning Fan nodded. Afterwards, he chatted with old Mrs. Zhou for a while before getting up and leaving. He went to Zhou Shuxin's room, but there was no one in the room. What he didn't know was that after he left the backyard of the Zhou family, Zhou Shuxin walked out of the room of the old lady Zhou. With a complex look in her eyes, she kept staring at the back of Ning Fan's leading figure before walking up to the old lady Zhou. "Grandma," Zhou Shuxin whispered, "are the things you just said to Xiaofan true? Aunt Rulin is not your daughter?" Old lady Zhou nodded, "Yes. I have not lied to Xiaofan," she said. She seemed to sense Zhou Shuxin's emotions, and kindly smiled, "Girl, if you have feelings for Xiaofan, go after him now and tell him, it's not too late. Otherwise, if he really leaves Hong County, it's unknown when you'll be able to see each other again." Chapter 135, Silly Granddaughter. No. Zhou Shuxin looked in the direction Ning Fan had left, her mouth curling up. "I'll just manage this company for him in Hong County. I believe that one day, Xiaofan will come back to see me." Old Lady Zhou sighed, reached out and touched Zhou Shuxin's head, "Silly granddaughter." The other side. Ning Fan left from the backyard of the Zhou family and ran into the old Zhou family head and the others, who seemed to be waiting for him specifically. "Xiaofan." Grandpa Zhou walked up to him and smiled gently. "It was Grandpa's fault before. Can you give us a chance to atone for our sins and let us buy the shares of Zhou's transport group at the original price, so that we can do our best to manage this company for you?" "Yes, yes, Fan, we are all family, and we don't want other people to reap the rewards. Fan, your second uncle has always seen you as a good boy, and I don't think you will refuse to grant us this small request, will you?" The Zhou family members all chimed in, trying to please Ning Fan. "Otherwise, tonight, your uncle will take you to a nice place. I guarantee you'll have a good time. Don't worry, your uncle is treating you." Before he could finish speaking, Ning Fan interrupted with a sneer, "Get out. I'm sick of seeing you all. Don't get in my way." Afterwards, he didn't even glance at the Zhou family again, made a phone call to Wang Ye, and then left on his feet. He wanted Wang Ye to take him away from Hong County immediately and return to Jiangcheng. This son of a bitch. He really doesn't give us any face. If we hadn't taken them in and fed them, their graves would have long since been overgrown. Seeing Ning Fan leave like this, the Zhou family couldn't help but curse. At this time, they regretted it deeply in their hearts. If they had known that Lone Wolf would not target Ning Fan, and that Ning Fan would even make the Rin family sign a cooperation contract, they would not have sold those stocks. Now they have really lost a lot. Poof. Someone said in a very sour tone, "It must be that this kid bragged in front of Lone Wolf and Rin Xiao, making them mistakenly believe that this kid is a big shot, so the two of them treated this son of a bitch like this. Just you wait. Once Lone Wolf and Rin Xiao realize that this kid is just a good-for-nothing bastard, they will never look at him again, and they will withdraw their cooperation. As for Lone Wolf, he will also get rid of him." The Zhou family members thought about the way Lone Wolf and Rin Xiao treated Ning Fan. Although they didn't think it would turn out like this, they didn't want Ning Fan to do well, so they could only comfort themselves in this way. After picking out a gift for each of Qin Xiu and Tang Chuchu in Hong County, Ning Fan asked Wang Ye to take him back to Jiangcheng, and this time there was an extra person, Zheng Qiqi. However, Ning Fan had asked Wang Ye to arrange for this girl. Entering the villa area of Zhanglong Island, it was as if every pore of Ning Fan's body had been opened, and the permeating aura surged towards him like a raging tide. Who? Feeling this surging spiritual energy, Ning Fan's face broke into a smile. The spiritual energy here on Hidden Dragon Island is still a bit denser. The industrial environment in Hong County is not suitable for cultivation. So he hasn't had this comfortable feeling for many days. Cho. Soon, Ningfan pushed open the door and laughed. Cho, have you missed me? At this moment, Qin Xiu was sitting at the table studying. Brother. Upon hearing Ningfan's voice, her eyes lit up, and she quickly got up and ran over to him, giving him a hug. I've missed you so much. Ningfan petted the top of her head and laughed fondly. I came back as soon as I finished up in Hong County. Qin Xiu blinked. Brother, did you see Grandma? Is she okay? Ningfan laughed. Grandma is in good health. You don't need to worry. Qin Xiu giggled. That's good, but unfortunately I have to go to school, so I can't go to Hong County to see Grandma. Ningfan was silent for a moment. He was wondering whether he should tell Qin Xiu about the issue of his and his sister's background, but then he looked at the little girl in front of him, who kept saying how good it was to see her grandmother. Ningfan sighed and decided that it was better to let Qin Xiu not know for the time being, and that he would find a suitable time to tell her later. Qin Xiu. Ningfan took out a jade pendant and handed it to Qin Xiu, smiling and saying, wear this jade pendant well and don't take it off. This was the gift he had finally found for Xiuqiu in Hong County. He had also embedded an amulet inside it, which could save her life in a critical moment. Great! Qin Xiu's eyes curved up. Thank you, brother, I like it very much. She took the jade pendant and couldn't wait to put it on. Go to bed early. Ningfan stroked the top of her head. You have class tomorrow. In 2 days, I'll cure the illness you have. By then, you won't have to suffer anymore. Qin Xiu nodded firmly and smiled sweetly. Okay. Brother, I know, you should go to bed early too. Good night. Very soon. Qin Xiu went back to her own room. Ningfan just got up to leave the living room when his phone rang. It was Xiao Lei calling. Dr. Ning. Xiao Lei's voice rang out. My father has already recovered. I have also found the medicinal herbs you asked me to find. At the Thanksgiving banquet 2 nights from now, my father plans to hand them over to you in person and thank you properly. 2 nights from now. Ningfan remembered the time. Okay, I got it. I'll go to that Thanksgiving banquet 2 nights from now. It will be the perfect time for him to ask Master Xiao about the qi in his body. Afterwards, he hung up the phone, entered his room, and activated the swallowing heaven technique. Instantly, his body seemed to turn into a black hole, endlessly greedily absorbing the spiritual energy. While he was engrossed in cultivation, the entire Jiang city began to fall into a furor. The Xiao family's invitations began to be sent out one after the other, and soon appeared in the hands of those at the top of Jiang city. The purpose was to invite these people to attend the thank you banquet for the divine doctor 2 days later. For a time, the entire Jiang city was shaken, and everyone believed that this was the Xiao family issuing a warning to the Jiang family. If the Xiao family consolidated all the power in Jiang city, it was likely that they would really drive the Jiang family out of Jiang city. The Yang family. Yang Fan and the others were sitting in the living room, surrounded by smoke. They were waiting for someone to return. Just now, they had learned the news that the Xiao family had released the invitations. If they could not obtain the invitations, not to mention climbing onto the Xiao family's coattails, I'm afraid even Grandpa Yang would lose his life. Dad, don't worry. Zheng Qiqi said proudly, Xiao Wei is not a loser like Ningfan. Since he said he could get the invitation, he will definitely be able to get it. Just as she finished speaking, a sound of footsteps came from outside the living room. Instantly, everyone got up, and soon, Chen Wei appeared in their line of sight. Xiao Wei. Yang Fan asked nervously, how is it? Did you get the invitation? Chapter 136 I'm very happy. Ha ha ha. Naturally, I got it. Chen Wei smiled proudly. 2 days ago, my father already went to see Mr. Xiao and expressed the Chen family's thoughts to him. So, this time, Mr. Xiao gave the Chen family an invitation, but this invitation can only let me bring one person in. In fact, he was almost in pain. When his father went to see Mr. Xiao, he was shut out. His father didn't even get to see Mr. Xiao. Not to mention giving them an invitation, which he bought from someone else for 200,000 yuan. There was no choice. At this time, if he wanted to pay off the 2 million yuan in high-interest loans, he had to keep the Young family at bay, and naturally he had to show them his strength. Great! I told you that Xiao Wei was awesome, and I never thought he could really get the Xiao family's invitation. Ha ha ha. At this time, the old master is saved. As long as Chen Wei mentions this at the banquet to Dr. Ning and the other party will definitely help. To say that our Yang family's opportunity is still Chen Wei. As for that Ning fan, he is just a jinx. If it weren't for him, how would the old master have been so angry? The Yang family members all praised Chen Wei and belittled Ning fan. This kid is about to be kicked out of Jiang City, and I'll see what he's got to be arrogant about then. For a while, the Yang family hall was filled with sounds of smugness. Husband. Zheng Qiqi said sweetly, since the Shao family really plans to target the Jiang family, then shouldn't we go after the company they're cooperating with first? In that case, the Shao family will definitely be more satisfied. Upon hearing this, the Yang family members' eyes lit up. Qiqi is right, if Mr. Shao knew about this, he would definitely value the Chen family even more. Chen Wei pondered for a moment, but who should we target? Zheng Qiqi sneered, naturally, it's the Tang family. After all, the Tang family is the main company that cooperates with the Jiang family. Moreover, that Ning fan and Tang Chuchu previously dared to humiliate us like that, how can we let them off now? At that time, we were afraid of them because they were the biggest company in Jiangcheng, and we didn't dare to speak. Now that we have the Shao family behind us, who are we afraid of? Chen Wei made up his mind. Do you have any ideas? Zheng Qiqi's mouth corners rose. Honey, you'll know tomorrow. The next day, at sunrise, Ning fan finished his training and went onto the roof to absorb the first purple light. He could clearly feel that his purple gold divine pupils were becoming more extraordinary. At that moment, a phone call came in, from Tang Chuchu. Ning fan. Tang Chuchu's voice was a little plaintive. Have you forgotten about me already? If Xiaoqiu hadn't messaged me last night, I wouldn't have known that you had returned to Jiangcheng. Ning fan hurriedly explained, I'm sorry. I got back very late last night, and I was afraid that you would be asleep, so I didn't disturb you. Don't worry, I've brought you a present this time, I won't forget you. He had a headache, and indeed women are the worst to offend. A present? Tang Chuchu exclaimed in surprise, really? Are you free today? Can you come over and keep me company? Ning fan thought for a moment. Okay, send me your location, I'll be right there. Then he hung up the phone. Tang Chuchu sent Ning fan her location, which was in the 1st district of Jiangcheng. The Tang family residence is in the 7th district. Ning fan wondered, why is she in the 1st district? However, since he had promised Tang Chuchu, after packing up a bit, Ning fan took a taxi to the 1st district of Jiangcheng. After arriving here, he suddenly realized that this place was a factory under construction. That's right. The 1st district of Jiangcheng is the closest to the provincial capital. Now that the Tang and Zhang families are cooperating, it will be much more convenient for the medicine to be transferred from here. You didn't sleep all night? Ning fan frowned when he saw Tang Chuchu. If you keep this up, it will be very harmful to your health. He could tell at a glance that Tang Chuchu's energy levels were off. It's nothing. Tang Chuchu yawned. It's just that these days, when the factory is just being built, it will be very busy. After this period of time, it will be fine, and I won't have to be so tired. You sit there for now, and wait until I finish what I'm doing. She didn't tell Ning fan the reason. Seeing Ning fan become more and more outstanding, how could Tang Chuchu not keep up? Therefore, she wanted to complete this cooperation with the Zheng family as soon as possible. Don't move. Ning fan suddenly walked up behind her and said imperiously, you can't do this. I'll give you a massage. Then you can get back to work. Afterwards. Before Tang Chuchu could react, Ning fan's palm had already landed on Tang Chuchu's shoulder. The close contact made Tang Chuchu's face flush. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. This was the first time she had had such contact with a man. Do you know how to massage? Tang Chuchu asked doubtfully. Why had you never mentioned it before? Ning fan replied, it's not bad, I'm not very skilled. He wasn't actually giving a pure massage, but in the process, he would channel a trace of spiritual energy into the palm of his hand, allowing it to enter Tang Chuchu's body. In that case, it would nourish her body, and it would work better than anything else. Half an hour later. Ning fan, you are truly amazing. Tang Chuchu stared at Ning fan with shining eyes. I feel super energetic now. How did you do it? Ning fan laughed. It's a secret. Tang Chuchu gave Ning fan a white look. You're good, now you're hiding it from me like this. Really, by the way, what did you say was the gift you brought me from Hong County this time? Ning fan took out a necklace. I saw this necklace in the Hong County shopping mall and thought it was quite nice. Ningfan handed it to Tang Qiqi and smiled, saying, so when I came back, I thought of buying it for you. It's made of sterling silver. It has a four-cornered pendant with diamonds sparkling. Tang Qiqi's gaze was immediately drawn to the necklace, and she said happily, it's really beautiful. This necklace shouldn't be cheap, right? Ningfan laughed and said, a gift for you, how can you put a price on it? Puff. Tang Qiqi laughed out, it's very pretty, and she pouted, saying, when did you learn to speak such sweet nothings? You come and put it on for me. Ningfan nodded, stood in front of Tang Qiqi, and carefully put the necklace around her neck. Just as he was about to fasten the clasp. But just then, Tang Qiqi suddenly took a step forward, her lips landing on Ningfan's side of his face, blushing as she giggled, Ningfan, thank you. I'm very happy. Chapter 137, maybe I can. For a moment, Ningfan's movements stiffened. He didn't expect Tang Qiqi to suddenly kiss him on the side of his face, and then he laughed. Hurry up and put it on for me. Tang Qiqi seemed to be shy, and gave Ningfan a white look, after I'm done, let's go shopping. Ningfan put the necklace on Tang Qiqi. The necklace fell on Tang Qiqi's perfect collarbone, which made her even more charming. It's really pretty. Ningfan smiled and praised, it's perfect. Tang Qiqi pushed Ningfan away and said, okay, go sit on the sofa. Just then. Bang! The door suddenly opened, and then someone rushed in anxiously, General Manager Tang, it's bad, there's a group of people outside claiming to be former residents of this place. They say that this is illegal construction and they want to demolish our factory. This is Tang Qiqi's secretary, Lu Ku. What? Tang Qiqi was flustered, we have already obtained permission from the land management department, so how could this have happened? Lucas said in a panic, I don't know either. We had already negotiated with the land management department, but they suddenly came here to cause trouble, and our people couldn't stop them. You'd better go out and take a look quickly, or they'll really destroy our place. Tang Qiqi panicked instantly. She still wanted to complete this cooperation with the Zheng family as soon as possible, so how could something happen at this time? Ningfan. You wait in the office for a while, I'll go take a look. After she instructed Ningfan, she left the office. Ningfan thought about it, and he followed Tang Qiqi's footsteps. Since those people were going to come here to make trouble, they might attack Tang Qiqi. Now that he was here, he naturally had to protect Tang Qiqi's safety. As for the jade pendant, he had given it to Tang Qiqi to protect her in case he wasn't around. Very quickly, he walked to the factory gate. By this time, there were already quite a few people standing there, all of them holding shovels and hoes in their hands. A crowd of people were pushing forward. Tang Qiqi stepped forward and said, we have obtained permission from the land management department. If there are any issues, you can go to the land management department to inquire. However, the crowd simply did not listen to Tang Qiqi. We don't care. This factory of yours is occupying our land. You built it without permission, and you must give us an explanation. Either pay compensation, yes, pay compensation, and give us the demolition funds. The crowd kept shouting. Tang Qiqi's face was ugly. She didn't understand. Ever since Miss Jiang announced that they would cooperate with the Tang family, her father had already sent people over to build the factory. Why had no one caused trouble at that time? Why did something happen just these 2 days after she had begged her father to transfer her here? Let's go together. We can't be bullied, otherwise these unscrupulous developers will think we are easy to bully. Smash the factory they built. The next moment, before Tang Qiqi could react, the group suddenly rushed up, brandishing their shovels and about to charge into the factory. Only. At this moment, one of them suddenly swung his shovel and smashed it at Tang Qiqi's body. This blow would definitely kill Tang Qiqi. Tang Qiqi was so scared that her face turned white, as did Lu Ku. Bang! However, just as the shovel was about to fall on Tang Qiqi, Ningfan appeared in time to block it, giving the man a cold stare. Boom! Then, Ningfan smashed out a punch, landing on his body, instantly breaking many of his bones. As expected. Seeing Ningfan's powerful fist, the group of people who wanted to cause trouble all quieted down. Qiqi, call the land management department. Ningfan spoke up, since you have already negotiated with the other party, then they should be responsible for this matter. Tang Qiqi nodded, she knew it too. Then, she quickly called the land management department. It didn't take long. A car stopped in front of the factory, and then two people walked out of it, wearing uniforms from the land management department. Hello. One of them walked up and said with a smile, "You are Miss Tang, right?" Tang Qiqi nodded and said, "Yes. When my father negotiated with your people, we agreed that this place would be used to build a factory. I want to know why this has happened now? They need to get the go-ahead from the land management department to build a factory on the land." "That's right, Miss Tang." Li Xian explained with a smile, "According to our investigation, the Tang Group does not have the conditions to open a factory at the moment, so last night we assessed the situation overnight and decided to take it back. We were going to wait until after work to tell you about this, and the money you paid will be returned to Tang's Group's account in a few days. This means that the indigenous people did not receive the demolition compensation, and you do not have the right to develop this land." "What?" Tang Qiqi was flustered. "How can you do this? You and my father had already reached an agreement, and Tang's Group was clearly doing well, and we even won the cooperation with the Jiang family, so how is it that you do not have the conditions to open a factory? If the factory cannot be opened, what will the Tang family use to cooperate with the Jiang family, and what will Tang Qiqi use to prove herself? It is precisely because you have won the cooperation with the Jiang family that we have been assessed as not having the right to develop land." Li Xian smiled slightly. "As far as I know, the Xiao family in Jiangcheng is gathering the powerful people in Jiangcheng, planning to drive the Zheng family in the provincial capital out of Jiangcheng. Then how will the Tang family cooperate with the Zheng family? Therefore, Miss Tang, please understand that we are not only thinking about you, but also about the workers." Tang Qiqi's face fell. She never imagined that a Xiao family would let things develop to this point. Ningfan frowned. "Is there no other way?" Li Xian smiled. "There is one more way, and that is to let our department head decide whether or not to let the Tang family continue to build the factory and develop the project." "The head of the land management department?" Tang Qiqi smiled bitterly and said, "The main strength of our Tang family is in business, and we have no intersection with people like this. If the other party knows about this matter, they will not help us." "The head of the land management department?" Ningfan raised an eyebrow. "Maybe I can call him." Here. Chapter 138, Let's Demolish It. "Ha?" For a moment, everyone's gaze turned to Ningfan. "Can he call the head of the land management department?" Tang Qiqi gave a bitter smile and said, "Ningfan, the head of the soil management department generally does not go out in particular. Forget it, I'll talk to my father about this matter. Let him figure out a way to solve it." She walked over to the side and called Tang Sihai. She knew that perhaps Ningfan was really extraordinary now, but it was limited to medical skills. As for Ningfan knowing the head of the soil management department, or even the head of the department, she felt that it was still impossible. After all, even their Tang family did not have such connections. "Miss Tang is right." Li Xian also shook his head and said, "Not to mention that it's not even our department head's working hours yet, even if he was at work. He wouldn't come here just because of someone. Usually, we would come here to deal with things like this. Besides, the order to withdraw the Tang Group's development of this land was also personally issued by our department head. Do you think he would withdraw it because of you?" Ningfan did not answer Li Xian, took out his phone and called Zhao Yuantang. "Old Zhao. Do you have the phone number of the head of the land management department from last time?" "Okay, just send it to my phone later." Li Xian shook his head, too lazy to talk to Ningfan. This person just won't give up. Their department head is so busy every day, how could he have time to come because of him? Soon, Ningfan received Chen Xin's phone number and called him. He said calmly, "This is Ningfan." Chen Xin's heart tightened when he heard Ningfan's voice, and he hurriedly said, "Mr. Ning, what can I do for you?" Ningfan got straight to the point. "Do you have time now? Come over to the first district. I need you to take care of something for me." Chen Xin hurriedly replied, "Yes. Mr. Ning, I'll come over right now to help you deal with it, and I also have something to trouble you about." Ningfan nodded and said, "Okay. I'll wait for you here." He hung up the phone. Coincidentally, Tang Qiqi also finished her phone call and walked over this way. Her face didn't look very good. "What's wrong?" Ningfan asked. Tang Qiqi looked downcast. "My father said that there is nothing he can do on his end, that he doesn't know the head of the land management department, and that the land will really be reclaimed. At that time, I won't even have a chance to prove myself." Seeing Ningfan become more and more outstanding while she still has to rely on her family, Tang Qiqi naturally feels very sad. "Trust me. Ning Fan reached out and grabbed Tang Chuchu's hand, smiling slightly, and said, "Very soon, the head of the land management department will come over. At that time, no matter what you have, you can talk to him about it." Tang Chuchu looked up at Ning Fan, gave a wry smile, and shook her head. Ding dong! At that moment, Li Xian's phone suddenly rang, and a message came through. "Sorry." Li Xian looked up at Tang Chuchu and said, "An order has been issued from above to take back this plot of land now. Therefore, the building behind you that has been built will also need to be torn down." Tang Chuchu's face changed. She didn't expect the soil management department to act so quickly, and they didn't even give the Tang family time to find someone through connections. "Wait a little longer." Ning Fan frowned. "Chen Qin will be here soon." "It's just that." Li Xian shook his head and said, "We can't wait, so please understand. Minister Chen will definitely not come over for this matter. Also, please don't directly address us as Minister Chen." At this moment, his gaze at Ning Fan had turned cold, and he became more and more hostile towards him. It's enough to brag in front of someone else's Miss Tang. Now he dares to directly address their minister by his name. I really don't know who gave him the qualifications. "Demolish it," Li Xian said directly. "Don't waste any more time." Tang Chuchu's face was ugly, and she took a deep breath before gritting her teeth and saying, "Ning Fan, let's go. Let's go shopping." She didn't want to watch this place being demolished, it would hurt her heart. Very quickly, Li Xian had already led the original residents here towards the buildings, brandishing their hoes as they tried to tear down the completed structures. However, at this moment, a car suddenly stopped in front of Ning Fan and the others, and then a person hurriedly got out. "Stop it all." This person shouted, "Don't move." As soon as these words fell, Li Xian and the others all looked at the person, and then their bodies trembled, exclaiming, "Minister?" The person who came was Chen Qin. However, at this time, his mouth was crooked and it looked extremely ugly. He simply ignored Li Xian. Instead, he quickly ran towards Ning Fan, saying hurriedly, "Mr. Ning, I'm sorry. If I had known you were related to the Tang family, I would not have issued that order." While he was coming over here, he already found out why Ning Fan had called him. Moreover, he also learned from Zhao Yuantang that the Mr. Ning standing in front of him was the miracle Dr. Ning that the Shao family wanted to invite to a banquet to thank. With such a relationship, how could the Shao family target the Tang and Jiang families? Most importantly, he also learned that the medical skills of this Ning doctor in front of him were even more formidable than Zhao Yuantang's. After learning this news, cold sweat broke out all over his body. Damn it! He almost offended such a great doctor to death. At this time, as his voice fell, the entire scene fell silent. Tang Chuchu, who was standing next to Ning Fan, was undoubtedly the one who was most shocked. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes widened as she stared at Chen Qin, her eyes full of disbelief. Is this for real? She felt like she was dreaming. Ning Fan actually knows the head of the land management department? And he was able to get him to come over here and treat him with such respect? Li Xian's body stiffened, and cold sweat broke out on his back. He didn't think he had offended this Mr. Ning just now, did he? Head Chen. Ning Fan smiled and said, "I think the Tang family should be very qualified to establish a factory on this land, right?" Chen Qin hurriedly smiled and said, "Yes, yes, yes. Mr. Ning, this is my fault. The Tang family is absolutely qualified, and I will give the order right now." Afterwards, he quickly made a few phone calls to settle the matter for Tang Chuchu. "Thank you." Ning Fan thanked him. "I'm sorry to trouble you with this." Chen Qin laughed dryly, "No trouble at all. By the way, Mr. Ning, there is something I would like to ask you for help with." Saying this, he pointed at his mouth and squeezed out a smile that was even more difficult to look at than a laugh. "Can you see if you can cure me?" Chapter 139, Always Growing. Ning Fan glanced at Chen Qin's mouth and nodded, "Yes." Upon hearing this, Chen Qin became excited. "Then I would like to ask Mr. Ning to help cure my illness." Ever since the day he had a conflict with Ning Fan and fell to the ground, his mouth had become like this. He had visited many hospitals, but none of them could cure him. Now that he heard that Ning Fan could cure him, how could he not be happy? Subsequently, Ning Fan pointed his 2 fingers at the acupuncture points on Chen Qin's face and said, "Buy 2 pairs of plasters to take home and stick them on for 2 days, and your problem will be completely cured. By the way, remember not to eat seafood or anything like that for the next 2 days." Chen Qin nodded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Ning, I understand." Then he looked at Tang Qiqi again and said with a smile, Miss Tang, if you encounter this kind of thing again in the future, remember to call me, I will definitely help you solve it. Tang Qiqi nodded, then I'll trouble you to take care of it in the future, Minister Chen. Chen Xin smiled, no trouble, it's just a trivial matter, and the Tang family is qualified to build a factory to help us in Jiangcheng share the pressure of employment. At this time, Li Xian walked over with his entourage, his scalp tingling, Minister. He was a little scared. I really didn't expect that the current Mr. Ning could make his own minister come personally and treat him with such an attitude. What have you done? Chen Xin's face changed directly, and he scolded, if I didn't come today, would you really smash the factory that Miss Tang built? Li Xian, right? I'll tell you, I'll fix you up when I get back. Li Xian bowed his head and didn't say a word. If he was targeted by Department Head Chen, it would be difficult for him to advance in the future. Department Head Chen, he's very good. At this time, Ning Fan laughed, he has always followed your orders and is a very nice person. I don't think you need to deal with him, but instead, you can help him. Since Li Xian came here, he has never taken advantage of his position as an employee of the Land Management Department to speak ill of them, but has always spoken politely. Ning Fan thinks he is very good at this. Since Mr. Ning thinks that Li is good, I will help Li more in the future. Chen Xin laughed out loud, Li, why don't you thank Mr. Ning properly? Ning Fan sighed, this person really knows how to change, just now it was Li Xian, and now it's Li so quickly. Li Xian looked at Ning Fan gratefully and said, thank you, Mr. Ning. Afterwards, Ning Fan and Chen Xin chatted for a while before they left. Ning Fan. Tang Qiqi thanked him, thank you. Ning Fan smiled, why, are you still being so polite to me? You can treat me to dinner later. Tang Qiqi nodded, okay. I can keep on treating you. Ning Fan laughed, for the rest of your life? Instantly. Tang Qiqi was stunned, and then she looked at Ning Fan. After a long while, she said softly, Ning Fan, you've changed. You've become more confident than before. Think about when you first met Ning Fan. What was he like back then? At that time, he even had some inferiority complex, and was always deliberately keeping his distance from you. When did he say something like that? Even when she teased him, he would blush and be shy. Ning Fan was silent, then laughed, people will always grow up. Tang Qiqi's words pointed him out, indeed. Since he inherited his father's legacy, his strength has continued to improve, and he has met many people through his medical skills. He has indeed changed a lot, becoming more confident. He will never again feel the same inferiority he felt before. But this also alerted Ning Fan, it's fine to be confident, but you must never be arrogant, otherwise sooner or later you will make a big mistake. Yes. Tang Qiqi giggled, then said, then I will feed you for the rest of your life. Afterwards, Tang Qiqi finished her errands here, and Ning Fan accompanied her as she strolled the streets for the whole day. When they returned to the villa on Hidden Dragon Island, he frowned and sensed that something was not quite right. There was a sense of foreboding around the villa. Ning Fan lifted his foot and entered the mountain villa. At this time, he suddenly saw a black-clad man sitting on the sofa. Who are you? Ning Fan asked coldly. Why are you here? The black-clad man got up, looked at Ning Fan, and said sternly, let me introduce myself, I am the Blood Gu Old Man. The Blood Gu Old Man? Ning Fan was stunned, but then a look of joy appeared on his face, it's you. I was originally looking for you, but I didn't expect you to come to my house on your own. This old man was the owner of the blood parasite that Ning Fan had killed. Later, the old man sent his apprentice to kill Ning Fan, but was killed in turn by Ning Fan. At the same time, Ning Fan discovered that he could absorb the power of the blood parasite. At the time, he had wanted to ask his apprentice where the old man was, but unfortunately his apprentice died before he could say anything. Ning Fan never expected that the old man would appear of his own accord tonight. Looking for me? The blood parasite elder said coldly, why, do you want to die? You killed my child and my apprentice, and yet you still want to find me. Ning Fan touched his nose and laughed, strictly speaking, I want the blood parasite on you. That thing is a great tonic. Upon hearing this, the blood parasite elder was momentarily stunned. Great tonic? You want to die. But soon, he reacted, furious, and said sternly, ignorant brat, it seems you don't know what I'm capable of. Since you are looking for death, then I will grant you your wish. After saying this, he raised his right arm, and saw that something was wriggling under the black clothes. Soon, a bloodworm appeared in Ning Fan's eyes. And there were more and more of them. However, after seeing these ugly and dirty worms, Ning Fan did not look afraid. On the contrary, he was very excited. Bring more, the more the better. After seeing Ning Fan's reaction, the old man's forehead began to bulge with veins. In the past, when anyone saw his bloodworms, they would show signs of panic. Ning Fan was definitely the first person to dare to get so excited. In his opinion, Ning Fan's behavior was a provocation. Next, the old man said in a sinister voice, "You will then know how terrifying my children are, and you will become their food." Ning Fan laughed while practicing the swallowing heaven technique. To be honest, the last person to say this to my face is now a corpse. Oh, no, he's not even a corpse anymore. The blood-crazed old man's face turned cold. Then you must die and be buried with my apprentice. His voice was chilling, as if there was some kind of magic in his words as he said, "Children, attach to his body and drink his blood." He looked at Ning Fan as if he were looking at a corpse. Chapter 140, Point Me in a Direction? Ning Fan suddenly laughed. Just a reminder, it's best not to let them get close to me, otherwise they'll die. The blood parasite old man snorted, but anyone who got close to his children would eventually be sucked dry of their blood and die. As for his children dying? No way. In his opinion, this must be Ning Fan panicking and dying a deathly death. Thinking this, the blood parasite old man sneered. Immediately afterwards, his left arm also lifted up, and dozens of blood maggots appeared in Ning Fan's eyes. Ning Fan became more and more happy. Ha ha ha, more. As long as there are enough blood maggots, maybe he can break through and improve his strength tonight. Just wait and die. The blood maggot old man sneered. I'll see if you can laugh out loud later. At this time, Ning Fan looked to him like food for his own child. Very soon, one by one, the blood maggots pierced Ning Fan's body, just as they were about to feed on his blood. And just then, Ning Fan directly activated the swallowing the sky technique. Very soon, his body seemed to turn into an endless black hole, as the auras around him were crazily absorbed into his body. Not just auras. The auras of the blood maggots also began to be absorbed by Ning Fan. The swallowing the sky technique, when cultivated to the end, can even devour all existence. As for these blood maggots, they pose no threat at all, and will only be transformed into the aura within his body. The reason why he reminded the blood maggot elder just now was to stimulate him, so that he would release more blood maggots for him to absorb. And at this moment, the blood maggot elder, whose face was filled with a broad smile, suddenly changed expression. He seemed to feel that he was losing contact with the blood maggots. How could this be? The old man with the blood maggots exclaimed in alarm, and then he shook his head. No, it's impossible, it must be an illusion on my part. How could this kid sever the connection between me and the blood maggots? However, as time passed, the old man's face grew more and more difficult to look at, and he looked at Ning Fan and yelled, "How could this be? What kind of evil arts are you using?" This time it's obvious. His connection with those blood maggots has become even weaker. The old man panicked. He had never encountered such a strange thing before. In the past, anyone who was stuck by his blood maggots would eventually die from blood loss. However, after hearing the blood maggot old man's words, Ning Fan simply ignored him and continued to use the devouring heaven technique to absorb the aura of the blood maggots. At this time, the aura around Ning Fan became even more powerful. It had to be said that the blood goo old man is worthy of being the master of that middle-aged man. The power of his blood goo insects is several times stronger, which has also made the aura in his body much stronger. Come back. The blood goo old man shouted in alarm, "Children, come back to me." However, his words were completely useless. The blood goo insects seemed to be glued to Ning Fan's body and could not move at all. Not to mention flying back. Stop. Stop sucking. The old man with the blood parasites shouted, "I won't kill you, I won't take revenge, as long as you stop now, I will leave." He felt a pain in his heart. These blood parasites were cultivated with great effort, and if they were all sucked up by Ning Fan, then it would be impossible for him to cultivate so many again. Thinking about what Ning Fan had just reminded him of, if he had known that this would really happen, he should have listened to Ning Fan. Stop? Ning Fan laughed, "You tried to kill me, it's a bit late to ask me to stop now." Having said that, he grinned and said, "Right, thank you for coming over in the middle of the night to give me warmth." Ning Fan's words almost made the blood goo old man spit out a mouthful of blood. He hated to go up and kill Ning Fan right now. But there was no way around it. Ning Fan's methods were too strange. He was even able to absorb the power of the bloodworms and sever the connection between him and the bloodworms, which left the bloodworm elder completely unable to do anything. After all of his strength and power relied on these bloodworms. Seeing that Ning Fan really had no intention of sparing his bloodworms, the bloodworm elder gritted his teeth and turned around, running towards the outside of the villa. This kid is too evil. He must leave, otherwise, perhaps later he will have to accompany his apprentice. However, as the blood goo old man just lifted his feet, a figure flashed past and soon appeared in front of him, looking at him with a playful smile. What, do you want to leave already? This person was Ning Fan. What do you want? The blood goo old man looked at Ning Fan, his face pale. You have already killed all my children, isn't that enough? Ning Fan smiled. You even tried to come and kill me, how can I let you go, don't you think so? The blood leech elder roared, don't you dare to push it. I still have the female leeches, they are not comparable to the blood leeches. Ning Fan narrowed his eyes and said, then you can release the blood leeches now, I want to see how powerful they are. Instantly, the old man's face fell. He was now unsure of what Ning Fan was saying. If this kid really sucked all the blood from his female parasites, then he was completely finished. I am an elder of the blood parasite sect. The old man gritted his teeth and could only try to threaten Ning Fan with his background. If you dare to kill me, the blood parasite sect will never let you go. He now only hoped that this kid had heard of the might of the blood parasite sect, in which case he might still have a way out. Blood goo sect? Ning Fan was stunned at first, and then quickly said, why don't you point in a direction? He didn't expect that there was a blood goo sect behind the killing of this blood goo old man. Point in a direction? The blood goo old man's face turned ugly. This kid is really fucking crazy. If he had known that Ning Fan was so evil and not afraid of death, he would never have come to trouble him. Do you really want to fight until one of us dies? The blood parasite elder said angrily, if you let me go today, I will never appear in front of you again. Bang! However, as soon as he finished speaking, Ning Fan had already stepped forward and slapped him. His aura pierced through his chest. For a moment, the blood parasite elder's expression froze. He looked at Ning Fan in disbelief, not expecting him to suddenly strike. He spoke with a trembling body, don't you want to know where the blood parasite sect is? I don't want to hear any more nonsense from you. Ning Fan smiled and said, as for the blood goo sect? Sooner or later, I will find out, there is no rush. Hearing Ning Fan's reply, the old man's eyes were completely vacant, and he collapsed on the ground. At this moment, a blood-colored bug crawled out of his body, and its body was much larger than those before. Is this his mother bug? Ning Fan said happily, it's so big, maybe I can break through now.